ourselves. 3, 2, 1. It's 7:31.
There we
so
go.
we're good to go. There you are. Perfect.
Yeah, I don't know what I just did, but it seemed to help.
Magic. Very nice. All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the public meeting of the Milton Conservation Commission. Commission members are appointed by the Select Board to implement the rules and regulations of the State Wetlands Protection Act, as well as the Milton Town Bylaw governing the wetlands. We have two matters of formality that we address at the beginning of each meeting. One is that we invite all to participate, members of the public, applicants, people that are interested, citizens. But we do ask that you identify yourself for the record-keeping purposes because this is a recorded meeting. The second aspect of our formality is we introduce ourselves. My name is John Kiernan. Steve, I'll just go along the top from what I see. Could you introduce yourself, Steve?
Sure. Steve Ivis, Conservation Agent.
And Arthur?
Arthur Doyle, Conservation Member.
Philip?
Philip Driscoll, Conservation Clerk.
Hey, welcome. This is your first one, right?
First one,
Right.
yes.
We welcome you with open arms, Philip. Thank you for your valuable help.
No
Todd,
problem.
I see you next.
Todd Hamilton, member.
Ingrid
Ingrid Beatty, Conservation Member.
and Tom, I see you alive and well. Welcome. You're on mute though, Tom. There you
Yeah,
go.
here I am. Tom Palmer, member.
Perfect. Thanks. We're all set to go, folks. And just so that we can be more efficient on our agenda, I want to draw the public's attention to 3 items that will be continued until our September meeting. And Steve, help me out. What's the date of our September meeting?
12 September.
12 September.
Yes.
All right. And those items that will be continued until the 12th of September. Number 8, notice of intent at 37 Trout Brook Avenue. I think they're going to introduce some updated wetlands delineation. Number 13 and number 14, 1259 Brush Hill Road Lot C and 1259 Brush Hill Road Lot D. At the request of the applicant, that those also will be continued until the 12th of September. So
Mr.
with
Chairman,
that, yes.
if I may, on 13 and 14,
Yes.
those have been continued for a considerable length of time. Is there a time limit on continuances?
No, there is not.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. What they're, in fact, for the public's benefit, what they're waiting for is they're working with, I think they're working with MIPA, because this is an area of critical environmental concern.
Right.
And so they do have to go through a MIPA review and they're still engaged in that. I mean, there are some time constraints, like if the wetlands delineation passed the 3-year mark, they'd have to go and redelineate it. Or we'd have to inspect it and approve it once again. But other than that, there's no restriction on the continuances, as long as it's coming from at their request.
Thank you.
All right, so first on the item is notice of intent at 600 Canton Avenue in Winter Valley and 85 Highland Street. Who is speaking for the applicant?
Good evening, Chair and fellow commissioners. Devin Howe from Associates, representing the owners and applicants for the project. I do have just a brief presentation that I'd like to give to the commission, if it's okay if I share my screen.
That would be perfect.
Is it Devin who's talking?
We've got a telephone number. It ends in 994 that you need to put it on mute, please. Go ahead, Devin.
Steve, are you the person to give me permissions?
Steve, I think you are.
I think everyone has the permission to share the screen, but try to share your screen.
It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay. Anybody know how to do that? How to enable screen sharing?
I know it can be done. Phil, can you help us?
I have no idea, but I can share my screen.
If you click on at the bottom of your screen on the share screen button as the host, an option should come up to share to let other participants share screen.
Okay, let's try it. I've just clicked on it and select a window or an application that you would want to share. This is post attendee. I don't see anything that tells me to allow other people to share the screen.
Okay, can you try and click on the participants tab? That's also on the bottom.
It is.
Well,
Yes.
But I have a participants tab on the side on my screen,
okay.
and I'm going to go to Devon. And I'm going to go over to, oops, what happened to Devon? Here we go. There's 3 little dots. I'm going to make him a co-host. Okay,
Perfect. I'm seeing the option now.
Great.
great.
Thanks, Devin.
Thank you very much. Who was that
Thanks,
helped?
Jennifer.
Thank you, Jennifer.
It's always the most nerve-wracking part of a presentation is not knowing if you'll if your PowerPoint will work. So
Whether
That's
you'll be
right.
seen or heard.
It's gonna only be by phone and not.
I couldn't.
So I'll jump right into it. So we're before the commission tonight for a notice of intent for removal of debris.
Devin, could I hold you for a minute, Devin?
Sure.
Telephone number ending in 994. Please go on mute because you're interrupting the speaker. Go ahead, Devin.
Thank you. So we filed a notice of intent for both the owners of 600 Canton Avenue, which is, as I'm sure the commission's well familiar with this property. It's this larger property outlined in yellow, as well as the owners of 85 Highland Street, which is this smaller property that I'm outlining here. The owners of 85 Highland Street are Branch in Elizabeth Lane, and the owner of 600 Canton Avenue is the Winter Valley Residences. So we're before, like I said, we're before the commission tonight for a notice of intent for removal of debris, invasive plants, species, accumulated sediment, as well as maintenance of overgrown vegetation in an on-site garden pond. So this is the plan that we submitted to the commission. The garden pond is outlined in green here. This is actually, I'll go back to the map here. When you pull into the site, there's the offices for Winter Valley at this building right here. That garden pond is sitting kind of, you can just see an opening in those pine trees based off this aerial view. That's where the garden pond is and where we're proposing our work. So really the goal of this project is to enhance and restore this garden pond. The garden pond is this area here that I'm outlining, demarcated also by this dash line. Up in this direction is a stream and associated wetlands. So that the flow regime flows from the right-hand side through a culvert underneath a driveway along this stream that eventually empties into this garden pond here before that water just kind of disperses around. The 85 Highland Street property is this portion up here. So what we've done is really this project can be broken down into 3 various components. The first is we're proposing to restore the capacity within this garden pond. What's happened is over the years, we're talking an extended period of time, probably close to half a century or so or more of debris and sediment that's accumulated within this pond. And there's been quite a bit of muck buildup, specifically in this area. I took some augers and found that there was about 15 inches of muck on the edge of this pond over here. And if I go to the next sheet, this is a view of the pond from that area that I was just pointing to. The muck you can see is on the bottom, and these yellow flowers are actually yellow flag iris, which is an invasive species. The yellow flag iris is really taken off within this pond. The iris typically prefers kind of shallower ponds, and typically where you see it is along the end of the ponds where, you know, naturally it's the higher in elevation, but still gets inundated with water during you know, the spring, and in this case the summer, where we've had quite a bit of rain. This pond area, to remove the iris and to restore the habitat for anything that's found within the pond. The yellow flag iris is really, it's created a dense mat around this whole pond, and even at the inflow, there's a large growth in this area where any sediment that flows into this, any natural sediment that were to flow into this pond, just gets stopped by that iris and just keeps building up as time goes on. And why that's important is the iris is actually it's toxic to animals, and it reduces the habitat for native fish and waterfowl. And while there might not be necessarily fish in this pond, what happens is in the spring and early fall, as the seeds germinate, there's actually an outlet structure right here where water flows down towards the wetlands up near Canton Street. And what makes this pond interesting is it was actually, I think it was constructed in the early 1900s as part of the estate that was this property. It's clearly man-made. There's along the edge of the stream, it's surrounded by boulders and rocks that clearly demarcate the edge. So I want to just bring us back to the photos where we would be looking to remove this iris through mechanical means. And what that means is some sort of excavator with an arm would reach out with a smooth bucket. We wouldn't want it to have that teeth, just so we could carefully scoop that muck and iris out. And why that's important is the rhizomes, or what forms that dense mat, are all connected together, where hundreds of these plants can be connected. And the most effective and best way to remove the iris is to go in there through mechanical means and remove as much of it as you can. And the alternative is if you don't do that, then it just will work to regenerate.
Devin, can I ask you about the mechanical means? We had some experience with Wollaston Golf Course, probably maybe 6 or 7 years ago, when they were trying to remove some aquatic growth from one of their ponds. And they gave us the specs for the machinery that would actually go into the water. They were gigantic inflatable tires. And there was some kind of a pan beneath any of the motor parts to ensure that there was no spillage. There was a pretty well-designed piece of machinery, but we were very careful about what we were approving to go into the water. This is a pretty sensitive area here. Can you give us the specs on this mechanical, this machine that you're going to use to go in and scoop the iris out?
So,
John, that would be an excavator with a smooth bucket is what he's talking about.
Yeah, but that's we don't want an excavator in there.
Well, wait a minute. An excavator can reach pretty far without going in. So it's depending on the size of the machine, how far the reach is.
Oh, no, I know that, but that's exactly why when Wollaston Golf Course did it, we were assured that the machine was appropriately protected from, hydraulic lines so that there would be no spillage into the water.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, John. If the machine stays out of the water, just the arm would go in. And Wollaston, the machine had the balloon ties, it went in the water.
Can't tell if the chair is frozen.
Yeah, it's frozen. It's still frozen.
Screens.
Do you have a script description on the machine?
So we have not selected a contractor yet, nor have we selected a specific machine that would be used for this.
Okay.
There's what we have done is we've prepared a sequence of construction, and it really we want to do this at a time where water elevations are the lowest. In the summer, maybe not necessarily this summer, just because of the amount of rain we've had. This pond actually completely dries up. Again, this summer has been extreme.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Where I was, there were rivers in Boston today that we were watching out the office.
Yeah.
But so what we would really want to do this work at the driest time of the year, where this pond, naturally dries out. And what we've done in our sequence of construction is we've included some provisions if they're necessary, where we would actually look at dewatering this pond through pumps that would filter into filter bags located in upland areas. And from there, we would actually potentially do some, we'd also open the, this is the outlet control structure where it just has some planks that sit there. As part of this restoration project, we're looking to clean up this outlet. You can see there's rock. There's actually a grate that extends really underneath all this debris. I think pretty much up until this point, it's just completely covered now with muck, debris, trash, everything. So we pulled those boards out, or we're proposing to pull those boards out, draw down that water, and then perform that that pumping that I was discussing if it's deemed necessary. But again, we'd want to do this work at the driest time of the year, where kind of our goal would be it might not even be necessary to have to dewater the pond.
Did we lose John completely?
I think we might have. I don't see him.
I don't either. He froze and then he disappeared.
Yeah.
Somebody want to try calling his cell?
Yeah, let me do it.
Just for your information, I just admitted John again.
Oh, he's back in? There he is.
Yes.
John's
There he is.
back.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was just calling in, sorry.
We were calling you.
Please re-enter the meeting password followed by #.
Sorry, go ahead. Apologies to all for that. I have no idea. I tried different browsers, and anyway, we're back. So what went on, Todd?
The tough part of Zoom is you never know when something will just randomly cut out. So, Chair, what I was explaining to the other commissioners is that this picture, this top left photo here, is actually an outlet structure. Back when Steve and I were actually on site, I want to say it feels like last year at this point, we saw a pipe that extended down into the wetland areas up near the intersection of Canton Avenue and Highland Street. And what we would propose to do is, number one, we want to do this work at the driest time of the year, where this pond actually dries out typically in the summer. Maybe not necessarily this summer just because of the amount of rain we've had. But what we would do is we would open this outlet control structure, allow this pond to dewater through the removal of those planks. You can just see one of those wood planks right in this area. Clean up all the debris, trash, and everything else that's accumulated on top of this grate here. Dewater the pond, and then if it's necessary, we would perform some supplemental drawdown of the pond if there's additional water. Again, it's this pond in a hot summer where over the past couple of years we've had droughts. There really hasn't been much to any water in this pond.
Is there any suggestion that this is a vernal pool, or could be if it does dry out during the year?
We have not done a vernal pool assessment on this.
How close is the other vernal pool that was sort of declared as part of the settlement in the Superior Court? It was deemed to be a vernal pool at 107 Highland. What's the proximity to that in terms of distance? Do you know?
I'm not familiar with 107 Highland.
In the application, it says that it's not a vernal pool. And that stuck out to me as well, because I would agree it's not a certified vernal pool, but it might meet the definition of a vernal pool. I mean, I don't think that was investigated on the basis of what we have at hand.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask, does it dry out? And then you said it dries out. So it may, in fact,
Maybe functioning as a vernal pool.
right. And that may have nothing to do with what you what you propose to do. I mean, it might be a good idea anyway. But we have to just double down on our scrutiny if it is a vernal pool. Tom, is there any way to do like a quick assessment? I know it's not March and I know it's not April, but is there any way to do like a quick assessment of that without the actual certification?
That's a tough one. I don't know. I think it's a lot easier in the spring. I think though that, as you mentioned, whether it is or it isn't, it's still a appropriate restoration project. There's no question that when you dig out all the plants and sediment, you're going to dig out a lot of inverts and stuff with them, but it can bounce back quite quickly. And I think long term, it should improve a vernal pool function if one is there, because it will create more room for water.
Yeah, I'd agree, Tom. It's going to get bigger and deeper.
And that is one of the goals of this project, is to excavate that muck, that thick mat
And can you get the equipment in and out of there, whether, put aside the issue about, what kind of an excavator you're gonna use, but whatever equipment it is, can you get it in and out of there without, cutting trees? Do you have to do are there any crossings here?
So we weren't necessarily proposing any crossings. We were along the edge of the pond, a 20-foot section where we would remove vines, invasives, fallen debris, and dead trees within that area. So that's extending 20 feet from the edge. And that's also what we would use to be able to track the equipment, back, to be able to reach these areas as far as we possibly could.
Well, now I'm going to have to defer to others, but Tom, I thought the salamanders love the dead trees. What are we removing here?
Well, it's true that dead wood can be habitat, but I think there's two goals here: to improve the habitat, and I think improve the landscaping quality for the use of the residents. Isn't that so? They're like two ideas happening here.
Yes. And what we did is we showed just generally, and this is not proposed as part of this notice of intent. But we did want to just raise it to the commission now, that maybe in the future, there would be some sort of proposed walking path within this area, shown in this gray area here, really extending along the edge of the pond. Again,
isn't there a lawn? Doesn't a lawn abut the pond on that side?
Yes, there's.
Yeah.
There's actually a paved walkway along this area here. And that grassed area is generally in this area here. Really, that's the edge of the woods line. So this area is where you're talking about that long area.
By the way, on the vernal pool question of salamanders, if you go in and dig it when the pond is at its driest, like from 4th of July to like October, there won't be any in there, because if they had bred in there, they would have already left. So at least for that particular wildlife species, they're not going to be in there when you're doing the work.
But if I'm understanding you correctly, Devin, though, you're saying that you want to take 20 feet from the resource area and like clean it up. That's our 25-foot non-disturb zone you're talking about. I get completely removing the muck and improving the functioning of the wetland, but I'm having trouble understanding why and I'm not talking about removing invasives, but I don't know what you're doing with that 20-foot border. You're cleaning up dead wood and fallen trees, and besides taking out the invasives, what are you doing there? And then you said later on you might want to put a walking path in there. That's right smack in the middle of our 25-foot non-disturbance zone.
And again, it's purely conceptual right now. It is not proposed. We didn't want to think, if for whatever reason, a couple of years down the road, we were pulling a bait and switch where, we're showing this, this 20-foot section now and changing what we're doing in the future. But really, one of the main purposes of being able to get this 20-foot area is, we have to be able to get that equipment back, short of trying to just drive something through, the pond itself.
Unless you use a completely different device. And John, I don't know, do we have that in our records?
Yes.
Okay. So we can pull that out, or our new assistant can pull that out.
Yes, and Phil, you can probably help it. You might have to call out to Kathy. The pond has a name, I could actually spot it on the golf course, but I don't know what the name of it is. But it's,
Might be Russell Pond.
no, I don't believe that's the right pond. The Russell is the big one, I think, Tom. This
Yes.
is one of the smallest ones at the end. And I wouldn't know one hole from the next, but it's away from the big pond. I think it's the furthest one away.
And that's at Wallaston?
Yes, it
Okay,
is. Kathy will know the name of the pond. Phil, if you reach out to Kathy Bowen.
okay, I will.
All right. Would anybody else like to see this? Because I'm a little concerned with, clearing a 20-foot pathway to get equipment in, especially if we don't know what the equipment is. I think we've got some other site walks that we're going to have to do this evening that might be appropriate to include this one on it. Sounds like a good project. I'm not suggesting otherwise. But I'm just a little concerned with
I agree. We need to look at it.
In when I met with Steve a few months ago, that was actually one of the points. Is we specifically would encourage us, especially for this project, for the commission to go out there and see this in person.
Could I raise one more point? We looked at pictures of that outlet structure, and we heard that there was a pipe leading downstream to another wetland. Did anyone talk about maybe daylighting that stream, trying to get it out of the pipe so it flows over the land? That would be an appropriate thing from an ecological point of view, but it doesn't seem to be part of the planning here. Was that considered?
We have not considered that.
From what I could tell on the town base map, it marks it as a stream, and it generally follows the border between the Winter Valley lot and the lots along Highland Street. So it wasn't clear to me whose land it was on, but it seemed to be mostly on Winter Valley property. And I don't know if there's room there to have a surface stream or not. I think it's just something to consider.
This black line right here, that's the property line. So that pipe actually, it does extend onto other people's property.
Yeah, so those would have to be dug up too if it was going to be removed from the pipe. Generally speaking, it's better not to put streams in pipes for ecological reasons. So removing it from a pipe is called daylighting. And I see it's not part of this project, but I think it's something to keep in mind.
All right, can we take out our calendars and see what day is appropriate? And I think we're going to have probably 2 other sites to visit. So let's start with this coming Saturday.
Don, I can't do this Saturday. I can do next Saturday.
What can you give me some dates? I should know them and I don't.
It's the 12th and the 19th of the next 2.
Yeah. I can do the
And by the way-
19th.
Yeah, by the way, John, I can't do either of those. I'm not available till the 26th.
Okay. Is everybody else available on the 26th? Tom, it would be good to have your input on this one, I think. So if
Yeah, I would like to go, but
If
Ingrid,
I
can
can,
you do
I
the-
would also encourage.
Yeah.
the 26th, if
I can do
possible.
the 26th as well.
Okay, Arthur,
I'm good.
Todd,
I think I'm good. I don't have anything to check in front of me. It's in the office, but I think I'm good.
okay, let's target the 26th then. Did I miss anybody? I don't think I did. So we've got Arthur, John, Todd, Ingrid, Tom available on the 26th. And I'll reach out to Wendy and Hans, but they're not here this evening. So let's set that up for is 8 o'clock okay, or
Yep.
8 o'clock on Saturday morning, the 26th?
sounds good.
Is that good? Ed Branch, I don't see you now, but I saw you there before. Is that good for you? You may be on mute. I can't see. Oh, Devin, is that good for you and the applicants?
That's perfect for me because I was actually I'm on I'm not in town the other 2 weekends. So
All right, good. All right, so let's tentatively plan that, but invite other questions from commissioners or abutters or members of the public who would like to ask a question or make a comment. First, commissioners, anybody? Hearing none, abutters, members of the public. I can't see the screen, so I can't see hands raised.
Chair, before you turn it over to the public, I just want to discuss one more piece of this project.
Sure.
And it's noted on this this big note right here. There's a couple very large pine trees that have fallen into the pond. Specifically, there's one right here that's fallen into the pond, as well as another one in this general area that's fallen into the pond. And as part of this project, we would like to remove those pines, as well as there are some large hazardous dead trees on the 85 Highland Street property. These have been flagged in the field, and as part of the site walk, we would request that the commission review these flag trees and determine whether it's acceptable to remove those trees as well.
Thanks, Devin. Yeah, that makes good sense. We can do it all at the same time. Any other thoughts, commissioners? Bob Hannigan, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I'm not a direct abutter, but I live on Thatcher Street, and I was wondering how this project impacts the drainage area at the corner of Highland Street and Canton Ave. Our storm drain on Thatcher Street drains into that wetlands area, and the pipe was installed in the 70s. It's a corrugated metal pipe, and it's in poor condition. And I just was wondering if any of the calculations were done to see what the impact would be on that drain into the wetlands area that obviously this pond empties into at the corner of Highland and Canton Avenue.
Bob, you can help me out on this, because I think you might know this, but doesn't the water end up in the stream in Wendell Park that discharges into Pine Tree Brook?
It could well be, but my concern is the storm drain in Thatcher Street. It empties into that so any impact in that area from anything on Winter Valley could possibly impact the storm drain in Thatcher Street.
Fair question, Devin. You could probably figure that out pretty easily, I think.
We could probably talk about that on the site visit. No problem.
No, it's actually a great question, and why I think another reason why this project is so positive is to help reduce stormwater flows. Typically, you see on large scale developments, excavating large detention ponds or something like that. This project would help restore that lost capacity that's been gone for quite a while. So it would actually help serve to reduce downstream flooding, because this water does flow down towards Canton Avenue, flows under towards Wendell Brook. So it would help to reduce those flow rates, and also help reduce the amount of volume of water that flows down. As well as, I think another key thing is what I said earlier regarding the iris, having those seeds germinate and wash downstream. I haven't checked for myself whether or not this is true, but those, the iris can, through those seeds, flow downstream and cause additional blockages and problems in Wendell Brook. Again, I haven't been down there myself, but that's one of the other positives of this project is helping.
I think there's very little or no propagation of those irises by seed. It's mostly by the tubers and the roots.
All right, good. It sounds like perhaps not from the seed perspective, but rather from just the volume of discharged water perspective. Good comment, good response, and that'll be the focus of our site walk. Bob, you good on the 26th as well?
No. I will be.
Good. All right. And Branch, I didn't see it before, but you're good with the 26th as well? You may be on mute, Branch. I can't hear you. All right.
He's also got a hand up, John, just FYI. He's saying yes.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
Thumbs up.
Thanks. All right. Without further ado, then, no other questions. I don't see any hands raised, and we'll continue this until, and that's a public meeting, by the way, folks. So we'll be in a public meeting session on the 26th. We'll meet at 85 Highland Street. Is that fair? Saturday morning at 8 o'clock. Thanks. So next on the agenda is number 2, and that is request for extension of order of conditions at Hillside Street, which is Houghton's Pond. Do we have a presenter for Houghton's Pond?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. So I'm not Joe Honorato. My name is Scott Conrad. I'm an aquatic biologist with Water and Wetland. So we're requesting to extend the order of conditions at Houghton's Pond to continue the removal of invasive plant species that are there, specifically variable leaf milfoil and fanwort. This is a DCR project that is still undergoing.
I think we quoted this project a month ago, or maybe 2 months ago, when somebody was, looking for an extension on a permit for aquatic control. And I think the issue became, well, it's not an issue, by the way, but the concern or the suggestion was that we just make sure that the chemicals that are being, or the herbicides currently being used are appropriately approved by EPA. And I know they change. And that's why we brought it up before. And I bring it up to you. Have you changed any of the chemicals that you propose to use that are different than that which we approved 3 years ago?
No, we have not changed any of those. The products are still approved by the EPA as well. So there's no concern there.
Okay, Ingrid, I don't mean to pick on you, but are you comfortable with this? And if the public doesn't know, Ingrid's she's sort of our resident genius in the chemical controls. So,
can you remind us what's on the list? I remember that conversation too, John.
Right now, recently we've been using Diquat.
Is it Rodeo?
No, it's Diquat is what we're using. Which trade name? There's multiple different trade names out there, but
spell the compound. DI?
Diquat, DIQUAT.
Okay, let me look it up.
Yep, it's actually used in fish hatcheries and things like that all across the country to remove parasites from the gills of young fish. So, at much higher rates than what we use.
Right. Could you just explain to me the difference between variable milfoil and Eurasian milfoil?
Certainly. So Eurasian water milfoil is a little bit thinner. It doesn't have as many as robust of leaflets going up through the stem. And also, Eurasian water milfoil typically has more of a reddish tip to the end of it as well. But both are both spread via fragmentation and do cause water to become stagnant and create dead zones for fish.
Right. So is the propagation of variable milfoil more or less than Eurasian?
It's kind of hard. Sorry, I didn't let you finish. I apologize.
No, that's okay. It sounded like you just got cut off for a second. No, go ahead.
So for propagation, they both auto-fragment, and they also they both also spread via fragmentation. Sorry.
Okay, so I guess the good news is there's not boat traffic in Houghton, so it makes it less so, I guess, for propagation issues. Okay, all right, thank you. We'll take a look at Daiquat.
No problem.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Tom.
Did you treat it any this year?
Yes, we did treat it this year.
Was it closed for swimming then?
Yes, it was.
Why was it closed?
So there's just a 24-hour label restriction that is required. So
Wasn't it closed for a longer period for a cyanobacteria bloom?
I'm not sure about that in particular. I know I was
noticed while you were there if people were swimming or not?
Well, I did see that people were swimming. As I was getting out there to treat, I was telling people to get out of the water because I was treating. So,
what day was that?
I don't remember the exact day, but I can get that for you guys.
Well, it was closed recently to everybody for swimming because
Yes.
of cyanobacteria. I
Yep,
think
yep.
that was within the last couple of weeks. Does anybody know?
I was there and I saw the signs up because I did a survey there last Tuesday, I believe it was, and that it was closed to swimming at that point in time.
Do you think that the decay that you cause by poisoning plants could create organic material that encourages the cyanobacteria?
So when we're killing those plants, the amount of phosphorus that's in those plants is not enough to really tip that balance to be in that favor. So we're trying not to kill a huge amount of biomass to create algae blooms like that.
I also noticed on your mapping of the distribution of the milfoil, it wasn't in the swimming area. Do you know why that was?
Probably because it's more sandy soil, which is not variable leaf's preferred substrate to grow in. So that's likely why it's not there.
And there was also a large area in the middle of the pond where there was no milfoil. Do you know why that is?
It's likely because it's too deep in that section. I'm not exactly the.
How deep is it?
I'm not sure of that exact depth off the top of my head. I apologize.
So how deep did you survey for plants?
I surveyed up to 20 feet deep. It's based on the amount of littoral zone that's there, the light penetrates through.
So have you been treating the pond every year for a number of years?
So I'm new with water and wetlands this year. So I have previous experience in New York doing this, and also in the state of Washington, Idaho, and Oregon as well. I just moved out here from Washington State, treating milfoil and things like that out there. So I don't know personally what has occurred prior to me being here, but I know that they have treated it prior to me being here.
Yeah, I don't.
I think it's like every 3 years. Yeah, I think it's like every 3 years typically. At least that's what it is. I mean, we've got Eurasian milfoil up at Lake Maury in Vermont, and they typically do it every 3 years.
I just mention it because from my point of view as a botanist and a naturalist, if I were to say to my landscaper, I don't want anything grown in my front yard, he could come back and he could keep killing the plants over and over. But that's sort of how I see this, as an attempt to remove vegetation from an area where it would naturally grow. So you're kind of having to overcome the natural tendency of the water body with water and light to grow plants. So that is working uphill. And I think it would be better if you could get the result you wanted without poisoning the living things.
Right. Well, let me just interject here. Have you considered divers? I mean, up at Lake Maury and Lake Fairleigh in Vermont, we do typically hire divers to go and hand pull. And particularly if there is not a ton of it, that's a very effective and non-toxic approach.
So I have personally not looked into that option, mainly because it is very expensive and it takes a very long time. But then there's also that the variable leaf milfoil and the fanwort both are very widespread within Houghton's Pond at this time.
And they're in every pond around here. Every last pond has that milfoil. The Eurasian milfoil is scarce. It likes a less acid pond. So I haven't seen much of it around here. But I would say that if you want Houghton's Pond to look like a New Hampshire lake, you're going to have to use a lot of herbicides because there's just enough nutrients and light and water to grow plants. And although I see that it's important to maintain this pond for swimming and recreation, I'm just questioning whether there might be ways to keep it open for those uses without poisoning everything.
So what are the alternatives, Joe?
Yeah.
I mean, I know I just looked up so dicot is still approved in the US. It's not in Europe.
I used it myself. I didn't use it. I hired people who used it at Willett Pond in Walpole, and it's a spot treatment. It's you use it where you have the most problems. It differs from sonar in that respect. At any rate, I'm not very familiar with hoses, but I do know that it is 80 feet deep. So there are large parts of the pond where you're not going to have rooted weeds because they would never reach the surface. But it is true that there are other areas with this milfoil, and to simply say, if we have any milfoil at all, we have to treat the pond, that's overkill, I think. At any rate, I don't suggest we not renew this. I'm just trying to kind of influence the process, I guess.
Joe, can you find out when the last time it was treated?
Let me just, I can look it up right now, actually. Actually, do this. It was.
Do you happen to know whether the big restroom there has a septic system right there? Because it's very close to the pond.
I do not know that
I
information.
think didn't they do something with
Yeah, we
pipes and
permitted
sewer
that.
up there recently?
They rebuilt it in the last 10 years. It's all new bathrooms. I just don't know whether it's sewered or not.
They did. I remember them digging up something to put pipe in there in the last
Well, that
couple
would
of
be
years.
good if they sewered it because that's a lot of phosphorus and nitrogen to go into the pond.
Agree. So it was treated on June 14th
Of this year.
of this year.
I think the cyanobacteria closure was much more recent than that, like the last 2 weeks. Yeah.
Could it be
The
from
real
all
hot
the rain?
weather and nobody could swim. That was a bigger crisis than milfoil.
Yeah, but did they close it because of all the rain? That creates a lot
It
of
was
it.
closed for cyanobacteria. That's all.
Yeah. And usually it needs to be pretty warm, so it could have been heat too, Todd. Remember we had a bad stretch of very, very hot weather.
Yeah. Maybe we should move on. I think that getting into larger questions, it can really be covered here.
Well, you've brought up a lot of
Yeah, I know. I'm
new
sorry.
points to me and expressed some concerns.
Yeah.
I mean, I was ready to go along with it from the get-go as soon as I heard the DEP and EPA still approved the dicot. And you raised some concerns, but now it seems like you're backing off the concerns and still willing to do the approval. Correct.
I respect the expertise of these specialists about what to do to make ponds usable. I just worry that in certain cases, the only solution is herbicide. I mean, there doesn't really seem to be any other option. And so I think you can get into a chemical dependency. And I certainly know that at Willet Pond, you can kill stuff, but it grows back because everything is there for it to grow. So you're really kind of trying to fight nature, and it's difficult. And if I was doing this man's job, I would have a hard time figuring out when I needed to use herbicide and when I didn't. I guess that would be.
Well, there is an alternative, and that is hand pulling. But the issue is these milfoils, regardless of what you do, they propagate and spread by fragmentation.
Yeah.
That's why I brought up the issue about the boating. It's much worse in water bodies that have, inboard or outboard motors, because it stirs it up and fragments it. So that's one thing in our favor. But, anyway, I'm okay with approving it as well. And, the reason I asked is, I'm not sure we need to do it every year, but, I think we do need to do it, or somebody's got to find the funding for hand pullers.
Well, how about extending it for less than 3 years and reconsider it 1 or 2 years?
What about adding a reporting requirement like at Wollaston? Just say, yes, you can do what you think advisable, but every year you have to tell us what you did.
We do send an end of the year report to the state as well, so we could supply that to you guys as well.
That sounds like a good idea. And what about extending
Okay.
it for less than 3 years and make it a 2-year extension? Would that satisfy you, Ingrid, in terms of, staying on top of this and you,
Yeah.
Tom?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good compromise.
All right. How about that? Are there abutters or members of the public that would like to ask a question or make a comment? Well, it seems like there's a consensus here. Is there a motion to extend the use of herbicides that have been approved by EPA and DEP that were previously approved in the order of conditions, but for a period of 2 years with a condition that we receive an annual report?
So
Come on.
moved, Mr. Chair.
All right. Steve, did you get that? I don't know.
It was
who gets
Ingrid
that.
and then it sounded like Arthur. Is that correct?
I'll second. Ingrid moved, I'll second.
Perfect. All right. Thank you very much. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll do an individual voice vote. Ingrid, how do you vote?
Aye.
Todd?
Aye.
Tom?
Yes.
Arthur?
Yes.
And John Kieran, aye as well. So that's unanimous. So a 2-year extension with an annual report.
Awesome.
Thank you very much. We're grateful.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Next on the agenda is number 3, notice of intent, 117 Fuller Lane. Do we have a presenter?
Yes, this is Mitch Maslanka with Goddard Consulting, representing the applicant Patrick Curtin. How you doing?
Good, good. Mitch, welcome.
Thank you.
You're on. Tell us what the project is.
Sounds good. Could I share my screen?
Yes, I don't know, Steve, you need to do anything again?
Let's find out. Make co-host. Yes. Try it now, Mitch.
Yep, looks like it's working.
Great.
Perfect. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so this is 117 Fuller's Lane. This is the ortho view, so you can see the aerial extent of it. There's a park over across the street. That's these woods over here. We got Fuller's Lane here. It's an unpaved road. And then here's our house at 117 Fuller's Lane. And we've got a backyard, lawn area. And then beyond the lawn area, we've got bordering vegetated wetlands. It's pretty wet in the forest there. And then the project that's proposed is an addition project. So there's going to be a couple pieces of the house added onto, and then a garage that will be added onto, as well as a deck and a pool and patio space. So here's some pictures just to give you a good lay of the land. So here's Fuller's Lane right here, small little lawn out front, and then the house at Fuller's Lane. Then we've got this little nook here. There's a small addition going there. Just so you guys are aware, across the street is a isolated vegetated wetland. So this is technically in the buffer zone to that isolated vegetated wetland. Then we've got our driveway here, and then this is next to that little nook I showed you guys. So it's a small little nook that they're putting the small addition on there. And to the left of this garage, they're proposing a garage addition so that they can get a second car in there. So beyond that driveway that you just saw, there's a little hillside going down into their backyard. They've got some open space there. They've got these stairs up to their back part of their house. And then beyond this rhododendron, we've got some forest. That's town of Milton land back there. So that's where the wetlands are there. And then deeper in there beyond the lawn is the wetlands. There is some small portions of lawn that we did flag as BVW, mostly just because the areas were clearly wet. So we, just for sake of easy permitting with you guys, we called those areas out as wetland, because of the hydric soils, and we were finding some wetland veg in the lawn. So we're just rolling with some small areas just outside of that that wood area, like these little spots here. We called out as BVW. So in the backyard, this is where I was just showing you from a picture up on top of the driveway up there. Now we're down in the backyard. So here's a portion of the back of the house that this is going to be taken down and turned into part of the garage extension, and it'll be extended out about 10 feet from where it exists currently. So this will only be impacting lawn basically right here. And the garage addition will be up on this hill where there's no vegetation up there. Here's another view, so you can see here's the little trellis thing going on. Then we have that here. So you can see, just imagine this coming out 10 feet, boom. That's where the new deck is going to be proposed out to. So only lawn is going to be impacted. We are going to be careful about this tree during construction, but we were going to, warn the commission if for some reason this tree gets damaged. We'd like to get permission beforehand that it would be okay to remove that and potentially mitigate it with some other red maple tree elsewhere on site. But they are hoping to keep that tree. And just one other thing to note in these pictures, current runoff conditions. So right now, stormwater comes down these roof gutters and goes right into the lawn. Down here, goes right into the lawn here, and then eventually makes its way into the wetlands over there. So part of the proposed project is to install 3 dry wells to capture roof runoff from the addition and the existing house to infiltrate the storm water so that it's not just flowing across the lawn and into the wetlands there. So that's a big improvement. Here's a picture of the backyard, so you can see what the lawn looks like. Just imagine where I'm standing is that edge of the forest. You can see I hung a blue flag right here. So pretty extensive lawn, or not extensive lawn, but a good amount of lawn space so that they can do their project without impacting a lot of vegetation. This tree here is going to be impacted. That's a red maple tree. The addition is going right there. So that tree, we are requesting permission to have that tree removed. That tree is about 50 feet from the wetlands off to the right and about 70 feet from the wetlands where this flag is. And
What's going where that, excuse me, just for a second, what's going where that tree is?
The house addition.
I see, okay.
Yep.
So it's not a deck?
Nope. The deck is gonna actually be replacing this portion of the house right here, and it's gonna extend out about 10 feet to about here.
I see, okay. I just saw a lovely picture of a design for a deck that let a big, old, beautiful tree be, the deck surrounded the trunk, leaving room for growth and whatnot. Okay,
Oh
thank
yeah,
you.
those are cool. Those are cool. So here's a rendering of the addition. So using that lawn space, and unfortunately where that one tall tree is right there. So they're having this little sunroom here, look out onto their pool, and still have some lawn space. There are trees over on the side here that they're going to keep. Those shouldn't be impacted. So this project's really only gonna need to take down one red maple tree and utilize existing lawn space. So that's the scope of the project, and let me know if the commission has any questions.
Mitch, Steve Ivas here. When were the wetlands flagged?
The wetlands were flagged. I don't have my wetland border report. Let me check real quick.
Well, let me tell you what I saw in the BVW delineation forms. 2019, July. What does that say to you?
That says to me that it is a couple of years old. But
too old for the regulations. We can't allow you to flag wetlands 4 years ago and then act on it.
Okay.
Under the
right.
regulations, you know that.
Yep.
I think they were initially, sorry to interrupt, I think they were initially flagged in 2019 and then reflagged potentially last year because it surpassed the date, but I could be wrong.
That's not what the report says.
I can revise the Yep, I understand, Steve, and thank you for telling me about that. I must not have caught that in my initial notice of intent submittal. I visited the site in let's see, March, and I verified the wetland line this March. I went out there and took all those pictures that you guys just saw. So I basically reconfirmed that wetland line at that date.
Did you see any other wetland resource areas on the lot?
No, just the bordering vegetated wetlands.
If you go back to that ortho photo, you can see there's something else going on there, I think.
A little further back, Tom.
Yeah. Do you see what looks like a stream channel running through that blue wetland?
Yep.
I do. I see a stream going through there. It looks like a dark line. And if I could share my screen, I'll show you something interesting in that regard. Let me just hit share. And
let's see, let me find you first.
Disabled for me.
Hang on a second, Tom. I've got to find you first.
This is an old topo map that shows that Cunningham Brook goes through the back line of this lot and the adjoining ones. And curiously, it's a topo from 1954 and shows the brook as a blue line, which would call it perennial under current definitions. But the new topo from 86 doesn't show it as a blue line, and that was in your report as well. But when you walked back there, you didn't see any flowing water. Is that so?
Well, I walked a good amount back there, but maybe I didn't look to get to the stream back there. But considering the scope of the project, we only flagged the bordering vegetated wetland boundary, knowing that an intermittent stream would only cast 100-foot buffer zone and wouldn't.
Well, if it was perennial, it would be 200 feet, wouldn't it?
Right, but it's not a perennial stream; it's an intermittent stream.
Well, how do you know that?
Because the USGS mapping, they have two types of lines. There's a dark blue line that is a perennial stream, and then a fainter blue line, which is an intermittent stream. So the
Yeah,
perennial
and
stream,
if we could share a screen, I would show you that dark blue line, although it
Tom,
is
take,
on it.
you are now, Tom, you're now co-host.
All right, can you see it, my screen?
Not yet, Tom.
All right,
Not yet.
I'll try sharing screen. I just think that it's sort of important, if there is a wetland resource area on this site, that it be put on the plan. And that's not the case right now because the stream isn't on the plan. And so I would ask that the plan be revised, and as apparently needs to be revised, the stream be put on the plan. Can you see this topo now?
It's coming. There it is.
There it is.
Do you see Fuller's Lane? It's the road that comes up from Cunningham Park, goes downward or to the south. And that blue line is Cunningham Brook, goes into Cunningham Park and then over the dashed line, which is the Quincy line. And Fuller's Lane continues up to that body of water, which is Fuller's Quarry. So this was mapped in 1954, showing this stream behind Fuller's Lane or behind these homes. So it's draining a pretty good area. In fact, the clubhouse at Granite Links is where this triangle is down here, sits right here. And the water to the right of that also drains toward this brook. So there should be water moving through there in March when you were there, but you didn't notice any, huh?
well, I may not have walked past that.
All right, well,
no.
all right.
Why
All I'm
don't we just
saying
take a look at it, Tom?
Yeah, all I'm saying is, I think you're right that the work that's proposed is mostly out of jurisdiction, but I don't think we should approve a plan that shows a lot and doesn't show all the wetlands on it, unless it says on the plan that this plan doesn't show all the wetland resource areas.
I'd be
further
happy
question.
to have our surveyor add that to our plan, just stating that any intermittent streams beyond the BVW boundary were not flagged during the.
Why say intermittent? Because you don't know yet. I mean, you know from the current topo that it doesn't have a dark blue line, but it's really a characteristic of the stream, not of the map. So I don't think we should say that it's intermittent. We shouldn't say anything about that unless you want to go to the trouble of investigating.
The way one person might investigate is do a stream stats query on the stream itself at 117 Fuller Lane, Tom. Okay.
Yeah.
So that would be the right way to do it. And you might want to do that, Mitch. You know how to do that, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
If everybody's done with looking at this map, I can turn off sharing.
Good. Thanks, Tom. And
Okay,
why don't we
I'll
put
do
this
that.
on the agenda for the 26th of August for a site walk,
Well, thank you
which will
for
follow our
Yeah.
Highland Street inspection.
you answer my question.
And Mitch, will you be able to reflag that before the 26th? Does that give you enough time?
I don't know if that's really necessary though, to go and flag where the stream is deep within the BVW.
No, I'm talking about reflagging the wetlands delineation, because if you're 4 years out, we need to, or maybe you could confirm what I think Pat, you indicated it might have been reflagged already, but just get us that information because we need something within 3 years.
Yep, what I'll do is I'll revise the report and make sure that it's current for you and that the flags are in appropriate places for you.
All right. And can I ask you one other thing, Mitch? Can you put up the proposed addition plan? Because I'm having trouble, it might be my eyesight, but I'm having trouble following the 25-foot non-disturbed zone.
Yep.
It just kind of trace it for me.
All right, you can see this, right?
I can, but if you could blow it up a little bit, because it almost looks like,
So I might be able to draw something for you.
okay,
So, so here's our edge of lawn, right? This dotted line. And then we've got the wetland boundary with these triangles. And then I'll draw out this 25-foot buffer zone. There.
all right, so right where it takes a right angle on the lower left there, it says crushed stone proposed. What is that?
So this is going to be the deck. So there'll be a deck and beneath it is the crushed stone.
So you're putting a deck in the 25-foot non-disturb?
Yep. So this is 17 feet. So this is portion of that BVW that we flagged as lawn right here, flag 8. And then the deck post will be at 17 feet. This is a cantilevered deck, so it'll hang over, and that hangover part will be at 15, but the post itself will be at 17.
Can you, I don't mean to use this in a cavalier fashion, but can you play with the footprint here? Because, you know, we try to be uniform in our application of the 25-foot non-disturb. And we've actually, I'll give you the address, 52, it runs from Canton Avenue to
Hemlock? Is that Hemlock,
that's
John?
it, 52 Hemlock, right. We did that, and it was a cantilever deck there too. And he said, no, just move it out. Is there any way you could get that out of our 25-foot non-disturb?
I'm sure we could try and play with some design. We are figuring, since it's already in a disturbed landscape with it being grass right now, that it would be okay to put the deck there, with it just being, you know, there's no permanent foundation. It's just going to be, looks like 3 posts and then a deck, or 4 posts, and then the deck above with crushed stone on the bottom. So it is a deck, but it's not going to have a permanent foundation.
Understood. We just try to be uniform in our application of the regs. And we just finished, we've done it. We did it to somebody after, I don't mean we did it to somebody, because we work with them. We're trying to get you to be creative and see if you can, you know, turn the deck or, you know, put it in a different direction, because we're pretty sensitive about that non-disturb zone. And the argument that you just made, I understood it completely, but that's the same argument that we had in those other locales.
Okay, so even if it's, you know, lawn, you got and already disturbed, you're saying that structures, typically you guys aren't fond of allowing in that 25-foot zone.
Right.
Okay.
And we were successful, or the applicant was successful, 114 Woodland, Steve? They moved the deck there, same issue.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, it's not the first time we've seen this, but we'll try to work with you and see if we can get creative how to get it done and still honor the non-disturb reg.
Understood. Okay. Yep. Okay, so I guess one more thing is, what if we did some mitigation? You know, right now this is some lawn. So what if we did plantings in there and some of these other lawn areas as plantings, and as our mitigation for having this small amount of deck space within the 25-foot? Have you guys allowed that on other projects?
It's funny. The answer is yes and no. Yes, literally is the answer to your question, because we just did it at the same place, 114 Woodland, because there was some wetland replication that they kind of owed us. So yes, we did that. It didn't happen to be with the deck though, it was for some other taking. So the answer is kind of yes and no. So why don't you make a proposal to us, so we won't prejudge it.
Okay.
All right.
All right, yeah, I think if we come back to you guys with the report with the wetland boundaries confirmed and making sure it's up to date, and then a mitigation plan for potentially having this small little deck space in the 25-foot. I think those could be our marching orders until we see you guys on the 26th for the site walk.
All right. And that's good with you, Mitch and Patrick, you as well? I can't see you. There you are. Okay.
Yep, sorry.
All right. Yeah, we should be there about, I don't know, 8:30, 8:45, something like that, on Saturday, the 26th. And I don't mean to cut off any other questions or comments from commissioners or abutters or members of the public. Any questions or comments from commissioners?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I think I heard Mitch mention that the property, of course, had been surveyed, and I just wanted to ask you if the property line and boundary stakes are in place and visible for us for the sidewalk.
The boundary lines are actually pretty well demarcated by some concrete retaining walls and fences. So those should probably be sufficient enough. When you go there, you'll be able to tell, okay, this is where his property is. But we didn't do the back one because that's pretty well into the wetlands back there.
Well, that's the one in which I'm really interested in seeing.
Yeah, could you stake that back corner of that deck that we've been talking about? Because that would really help us, in terms of placing in context the issue.
Yep, we can have that staked for you. Yep.
That's great.
And I would like to see the rear property line, the stakes for the rear property line.
I mean, do you think that's super needed with the work happening quite a ways away? I don't even know
if you're presenting a plan that shows the whole lot, I think it needs to be acknowledged that there's more than to the lot than where you're working. I agree with Arthur about that. And this will help us with our issue of whether there is a stream, because if we want to get to that back lot line, we'll have to step across it. We'll find out if there's one there or not.
All right. Well, it probably isn't too big of a deal for me to just take a tape measure from the property line, the Fuller's Lane, and go the 100 feet, because it's 100 feet from basically wetland flag 7. So I could get a pretty good line for you, but I think just with the surveyor, it'd be tough to get the official survey stake out there, but I can give you guys a good estimate to where that back property
That would
line
be
is.
good enough for me.
Yeah, I agree.
Awesome. Okay,
Mhm.
sweet.
Steve Johnson, I see your hand raised. Are you there? Now I've lost it. Now I don't see Steve Johnson. Does anybody see him?
No,
From Steve Johnson. Oh, that was an accident. Okay, I saw the screen, the message. Thanks, Steve. Okay, he's good. Any other comments, suggestions, or questions?
I have a question for Tom, Bob Hannigan. Tom, you mentioned there's an 86 USGS map that does not show a blue line for the cutting.
Yeah, it's in the report.
Yeah, did you show that?
It's in one of these pages. I forget which one it is, but maybe
Well, if it's no longer a blue line on the USGS map, then is it in fact a perennial stream?
I can pull that up for you guys.
yeah, that's a sort of legal versus scientific, because the legal definition is it must have a blue line, but the stream doesn't know what it must have. The stream is a thing in the real world, and it has a quality of either being perennial or not.
My question has always been, what's the derivation of the 1946 delineation? I mean, a cartographer probably just drew a blue line there.
Well, I remember talking to a guy at Cunningham who remembered catching trout at Cunningham Brook. This was like 20 years ago. I talked to this old timer, but it was different back then. And you may know that, yeah, there it is.
Yeah, it's
So
not,
you
it's
could
not a
say-
blue line 86 map, so.
Yeah, that line has disappeared. So
Yeah.
did the stream disappear?
I would just mention along these lines, supporting the need for the sidewalk, that in 70 years, it has always been wet every time that I have been there.
My guess is the water still flows through there, but I do know that Quarry Hills now takes some of the water that used to go there. They capture it at Quarry Hills Drive in that big wetland in the bend.
Yeah, that's fine. We all know that. But the question is, the legal definition, I assume, for a perennial stream is the blue line on the USGS map. It's no longer
Well,
there.
But it also says throughout the regulations that that's the presumption that can be overcome by evidence to the contrary. And
Yeah,
that's
That's correct.
Yeah, there's a blue line there, but if there's no blue line there in 86, anyway, I've said enough. So.
Okay, thanks,
I get it,
Bob.
Bob.
And maybe
Yeah, I
the
get what
stream
you're saying.
stats is the way to resolve this rather hypothetical discussion.
Waiting.
All right, we ready to move on?
John, it looks like there's someone in the waiting room that's waiting to get in.
Yes.
Catherine Simpson.
There are a
And I'm
number of
trying
people
to-
waiting.
And this is Steve, and I'm trying to find the waiting room on my screen.
This is Ned Corcoran. I've got a couple of people waiting. Obviously, we're on later, but we're trying to get in.
Show video panel.
Oh, Catherine Simpson's in, Steve.
Looking for
She's
Mike,
in.
Mike Walrazak and Blaine Buck trying to be admitted.
Okay, well, this is curious. Because I don't see the waiting room. I saw it earlier tonight. But
Ned,
the-
they're not in on this particular agenda item, are they?
No, they're not. We
No.
have, I think we have at least 6 more to go, but they're anxious to be on. So that when-
Recognized. Yeah, I understand. I
yeah,
understand.
I'm trying to find them though.
All right.
Um,
While y'all looking for that, Steve, is there anybody, because I can't see as long as the screen share is up there, I can't see the other people. Are there any hands raised that anyone can see?
Nothing visible.
All right.
Gage.
All right,
There's
then,
a raised hand from Chris, Chris
go ahead, Chris.
that I see.
Chris, if you can unmute and speak, it would be great. There you are. Chris, do you want to address something or ask a question or make a comment on 117 Fuller Lane? Help me out, Chris. Well, if we need to, we'll come back, but not hearing from Chris, we'll continue this with the assent of the applicant until August 26th. That's somewhere around 8:45 or close to that, at the address at 117. Good? All right, thanks all.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is request for determination of applicability at 7 Brookside Park. Do we have the applicant with us?
Yes, Emily Sinclair.
Emily, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Can you tell us about your project, your proposal?
Sure. So I live at 7 Brookside Park, and the back of our property abuts the Pine Tree Brook. So most of our yard is within the 25 feet. We have an existing fence that I took pictures of and I put in the application, but let me know if you want me to share my screen. I can do that as well. And part of the chain link fence that is there is missing, and it has been since we purchased the property 5 years ago. And there's also a section of it that was damaged by a tree that fell. And so we're hoping to replace the fence so that it's fenced in. We have 2 kids under 5, and we have new neighbors that have 3 kids under 5. So we're trying to make sure that kids don't end up in the brook. And then while doing
That's
that,
a good thing, Emily.
yeah, I mean, also kids' toys, but mostly the kids. And especially this summer, that water has been quite high and becomes more entertaining the more you can see it. So And then at the same time, the section behind our barn is overgrown, and we have been working every year to pull out different invasive species that are trying to take root there. We had Arborway come a couple of years ago and pull out some saplings, but we're hoping to use this opportunity, since they have to clear some of that to get in and put the fence in, to clear the brush and whatever is back there, and put in a porous stone patio.
All right, we have
Emily,
go ahead, Steve.
I made Emily co-host at least, so she could show
great.
some
I can
photos.
Sure.
Sure. And I'm still looking for the waiting room, and I cannot find it, Mr. Chairman, just FYI.
Ned, I don't know if you can, if you're in a position to help out on that, maybe they could drop out and then reapply and bypass the waiting room. Just give it a second shot. We've got enough time to do that, I think, Ned.
Yeah, we'll give it, they've tried a couple of times, but we'll keep trying. Thank you.
All right, thanks. All right, Emily, we can see your screen share.
Okay, great.
Nice pictures.
So here is the section that runs, this is the back of our property. This is the existing fence. You can't even see where it ends here, but it's around here that there's no fence going to the left. And then in this very narrow space, again, that's where the fence ends. And so they're coming into fence that length behind the barn running along the brook, and then put in the patio in this space as well. It would look something like this. This is the fence that we're looking to put in. So you'd be able to see the brook, but it would have the wire behind the post and beam so nothing could go in. And then a permeable patio in that space. As
All right,
well.
the commission actually has, I think, a pretty good memory of Brookside, that area and the proximity to the brook.
Yes.
Would you allow us or invite us perhaps to come and take a look at it on Saturday, the 26th?
You're welcome to come and see it. Steve also was nice enough to walk the area with me and look at it as well. So if you want to come again, you're all invited, but I believe he has notes on his visit as well.
Yes, Steve, I'm just, again, this is a uniformity of application of our regs that I just want to make sure that we deal with everyone in the same fashion. It sounds like a good project, Emily, so don't be concerned if it sounds like they're putting form over substance.
No, that's okay.
Keep the kids out of the brook, that's a good thing.
Yes, that's the goal.
And the permeable patio, I think, will keep us happy, because sometimes you can, if it's not permeable, you can create a runoff situation that could. Am I correct that it's an armored or a stone wall to the brook at that location?
Yes, that's correct.
It is. All right.
Yeah,
So
it's
it
a
doesn't sound like
stone
erosion
like
would be an
bank.
issue. Okay.
Yeah, and the water's never come up. We've always had at least 3 or 4 feet to, even with all of the rain we've had this summer, but we're trying to look for the best solution for that space back there, and the patio seems better than trying to seed or grass or any of that. So
Okay, so one of the issues here, it's clearly within, it looks like it's going to be within 25 feet of a non-disturbed zone. So we've got a town bylaw regulation that we'd have to look at as well. But this is a public meeting and we can vote right then and there at the public meeting. So it's not a time issue, I don't think, if we can get it done on the 26th. Any other comments from commissioners?
I did read in the report that it was 10 feet deep, the trench that the brook runs in. Is it really that deep?
That it goes down that deep? The
10
wall
feet from the lawn to the bottom of the brook?
The wall near us is pretty high. Yeah.
10 feet would be, if you're standing in the brook, it's still way over your head, the top of the wall.
It's over my head. Yeah. I mean, I'm not that tall, but yes.
Yeah.
I think it varies, obviously, like as the brook goes behind different yards. I think it's not as deep. Our neighbors to the left, and then our neighbors to the right, they even have like stone steps that go down leading into the brook.
Yeah, I agree that you have to fence it there. On the other hand, it is unfortunate that the kids can't enjoy the brook, but there's just no place to do it on your lot.
Correct. Yep. And if there are definitely times in the year where the water is lower and would be definitely safer for them to have access to it. But this summer has not been that time.
Yeah, when it's really flowing hard, can you hear it in the backyard?
Yeah, it's really nice.
I agree with John that this is reasonable project.
Any other commissioners? Comment, question? Other abutters, members of the public that have a question or would like to make a comment? And again, with the screen sharing, I can't see any hands. Steve, can you see any hands raised?
I cannot. Nope.
All right. Then can we continue this then until the 26th? It'll probably be about 9:30 in the morning before we get there, Emily. And
Okay.
it won't be intrusive and we'll be in and
That's
out
fine.
in short order.
We may not be there. We're on our way back from a trip, but you have my permission to walk around, and our neighbors know that you may be coming as well. Our neighbors are hoping that this fence goes in. So
I bet. Now,
Go
let
for
me
it.
ask you sort of a common sense question. Do the neighbors want to extend the fence as well to their property?
The neighbors, if you're facing the brook, our neighbors to the right, with the three young kids, they just bought that property this spring, and they are it's on their list of things to do is to redo their fence along that area. And they have contacted, I believe, the same landscaper that is going to do ours. So it would follow the same project, but it's not in their immediate. They have a lot of housework projects that they need to do first. I don't think it's in this round.
Understood.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Then we'll be on site on the 26th of August at about 9:30.
Okay. Sounds great.
Thanks, Emily.
You bet.
All right. Good evening. Next on the agenda is request for determination of applicability, Randolph Avenue, I-38D through 10A. Arthur, are you on that?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chairman. This is like several of the other sites for Conservation Commission signs. Steve has a couple of frames that relate to this. This is the 3-part parcel of land along Randolph Avenue, the middle portion of which was part of the land swap voted at town meeting. What is being proposed here is that a sign be put at the line, if you will, between the first portion and the second portion, rather than in the middle. The process of those properties that were voted on for conservation purposes at town meeting are being worked on relative to preparation of the transfers for the select board, when that work would be completed by town council's office is unknown at this time. Steve, can you assist with those 3 photos that I sent you?
I had one of them up, but it's disappeared. So let me go searching for it. Okay, one moment. Okay.
In the meantime, there were a couple of maps of this area, one of which indicated a stream in the background, another one of which did not. So I went to the site, walked it. You've been there in the past, John, as well. I think all of us have been. There is what looks like to be in quote, intermittent quote, water activity at the base of the hill when there is water. It was brown when I was there last, shortly after a rainfall, when I took the photos that I sent to Steve. A deer had crossed over that area, had a print in it. I went down through the poison ivy to take a look at it. There was no water pooled in the deer print. And no evidence of water in that brown area.
All right, while he's searching, Arthur, I think this is a fabulous idea, and I credit you with being the driving force behind it to get the public notification of conservation land up. I think that's very important. And so I don't mean to throw gasoline on a fire here, but one of the issues that may come from telling the public this is conservation land is the amount of trash that's been allowed to accumulate along Randolph Avenue in that area. And this is a state highway, so I'm not sure if we should take the lead, we, the Conservation Commission, should take the lead in asking the state highway to help us clean it up, or whether or not we should ask our town DPW to help clean it up, or if we should go to the school department and say, for some of these graduating seniors that have community service hours to accumulate, that maybe they could help us. Obviously, with police protection, it's a dangerous area. But what do you think? I mean, do you think
when I walked that line this last month, it was cleaner than I've seen in a long time. I don't know if somebody's been in there to do some work on it, but one of the things that we could do, John, is bring that question to the head of our Department of Public Works and see what recommendation Chase Berkeley would make with respect to his department, the town, and other agencies such as the state. I saw him today because I was up bushwhacking Holland Street for the sites that we had previously marked. Those flags had disappeared, and there's tremendous overgrowth now with the summer month. And that's a site that's far worse. That's an area, clearly Milton Conservation, that is far worse off with respect to debris than what I saw on Randolph Avenue. In fact, I told Chase today there was a generator that had been thrown in because there's not much in the way of shoulders off Holland Street. So things can be thrown off the road or the street, and they go down and they're not visible when you're driving by. But if you walk it, they're visible.
So can you see what I have on the screen presently?
Yeah, that's not one of the ones that I sent you.
No, it's not. It's the overview, and I cannot find the photos.
Okay.
But this is the location along Randolph Ave of that center property as you described.
Right, and the sign would go at the end of the first sub parcel.
Right in here.
And that would be, well, a little further out, depending.
Further out?
Yeah, this is Randolph Avenue. This parcel that you have would need to be moved on its side.
Randolph Avenue goes north-south here.
That's correct.
The parcel is the center of the other two parcels. There are two conservation parcels. This is not the center parcel?
That's correct. That may be the center parcel. Okay, so the sign would go, see where let's take it that way. This is the center parcel only that you have up, right, Steve?
Yes.
Yes, that's
okay,
correct.
Good. See where the P is? We're on Randolph Avenue.
Right here.
That's right. That's where the sign would go. And that way it would be not on the parcel taken at town meeting, for which the paperwork hasn't yet been done, but it would be right next door to it. And it would also be the parcel that's going to be near the 40B that's going to be developed by the driveway into the dump.
Along the access road.
Possibly
yes.
where an animal shelter may or may not go. So the sign would be proximate to those two possible construction sites.
Up in here.
Yep,
Yes.
right.
All right, so who decides and when will the sign go in there?
If we approve it, then it would go to the DPW and they would install it. Director of Operations, Mr. Thomas McCarthy has that responsibility, and the Chase Peterson, DPW Director. And Tom's been installing the other signs, the most recent one of which went up at the intersection of Canton Avenue and Guile Road last week.
Oh, that's good news, Arthur, and thank you for driving.
There's another one that just went up fairly recently along the Neponset River Trail just behind the Hendrys.
0 Elliott Street. Excellent.
Yep,
Thank
it
you.
just went up a couple days ago. I took a run yesterday and it was up.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it looks good.
Well, good. Please, Arthur, convey our thanks and gratitude to Tom McCarthy and Chase Berkeley and the others on the team that are putting them in.
Yeah, the crew does excellent work.
All right, so
And the
this
hard
is
work,
for the
you should see the size of the boulders that they had to move to get the one installed at the Guile Road Canton Avenue intersection.
All right, and that actually is a good segue into explaining to the public why this is an RDA, because there is some alteration. Just putting the sign in is technically an alteration. So this is a request for a determination of applicability. And one of our options is to issue a negative determination for the purpose of putting this in to the extent that this would not create an adverse impact upon the land that we're protecting. That is by placing the sign in the area that's been designated. So I entertain a motion to issue a negative determination of applicability to allow the installation of the sign on Randolph Avenue in the area that Arthur has indicated. Is there such a motion?
I'll move that.
Thanks, Tom. Is there a second? Ingrid, thank you very much. Any discussion? All in favor? This is a individual voice vote. Arthur, how do you vote?
Yes.
Todd, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ingrid, how do you vote?
Yes.
Tom, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote aye as well, John Kiernan. Yes, so that's unanimous. Thanks, Arthur, for doing that, and please extend our gratitude to the staff at the DPW. And please, Philip, please, you convey thanks to you and also convey to your colleagues at the DPW.
I definitely will.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, next on the agenda is number 6, request for determination of applicability at 23 Low Circle.
Good evening. My name is Bob Hannigan, engineer for the Jennifer and Michael Daly at 23 Low Circle. And we have a request for determination of applicability for them to replace an existing deck and expand the deck outside of the 25-foot non-disturbed zone. The initial plan that I submitted, everything was kind of in a rush. It was based on the old delineation for the lower state subdivision, and then fortunately, got a consulting Scott Gog was able to get someone out to redelineate that line, and I feel located that line and show on the plan the line 25-foot non-disturbed zone with a silt barrier along the edge of the 25-foot non-disturbed zone, and the proposed expanded deck is 16 by 20 with some new stairs to replace the existing stairs that would be demoed, and the corner of the deck closest to the resource area is 8.5 inches beyond the 25-foot non-disturbed zone. So we're here to request a similar judgment by the commission that you had done for the Randolph Ave DPW sign project.
When you said 8.5 inches, are you 8.5 inches inside the 25 or outside the 25 foot?
Outside the 25.
Okay. All right, and is this resource area designated? This is Goddard Associates, August 2023.
Correct. The initial plan that I submitted was the old one, and it's somewhat similar to, I noticed some old remnants of old flags when I was field locating the new line on the second, just after Scott's personnel delineated it. And that's shown as GA1 through GA17. The line extended a little bit beyond the GA17, but it tailed away from towards the Metropolitan Ave, so I didn't rotate that.
Bob, I'm only hesitating. I'm just comparing your August 1st letter to your August 3rd letter.
Right.
And the difference is?
The only difference really, John, is the fact that in the August 1st letter, I explained that we weren't able at the time to get someone out to delineate the line. So we used the old line. And that's the initial plan dated July 31st. And then Scott's group was able to get out and on the second delineate the new line, which is shown on the updated plan August 3rd. So and the 25-foot non-disturbed zone is based on the Goddard Associates' most recent delineation.
Okay. Our custom and practice, as you know, has been to review and approve the line. I don't see any issues, but our custom and practice has been to look at the line as delineated. So I suggested we could do that on the 26th of August, if others think that is appropriate.
Yeah, I think we have to go look at it, don't we?
We always have, at least for the last 31 years. So can we put this on? It'd be maybe 10 o'clock, Bob, before we get there?
No, that would be mostly very, very acceptable. Yes.
All right. Yeah, and I don't see any issues as long as you're outside of a sacred 25 feet, then it's a public meeting and we can take a vote.
There'll be no regrading. It'll just be the replacement of the deck.
Any other comments from commissioners or abutters or members of the public? Hearing none, seeing none. I don't see any hands raised, but because of the screen share, I can't see everybody. Steve, any hands raised?
Looking, do not see anything. Anybody?
All right. Then with the assent of the applicant, we'll continue this until the 26th of August. It's probably going to be about, what did I say, 9:30?
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock. 10 o'clock. All right. I don't think any of these site visits are going to be lengthy, so we should be able to get there in short order. All
Very
right.
good.
Thanks, Bob, very much.
Appreciate it, John, and the commission members. Thank you.
Number 7 is our next item, notice of intent, 114 Hillside Street. This is a continued hearing.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening, but I can't see you.
I don't have a camera on, but I can share my screen. Pretty much I'm going to be showing the same plan that's on screen right now.
Gabriel, let me see. Let me make you a co-host at the same time. Okay, if I can again figure out how the heck to do that. Zoom is not an easy application. I'll leave it at that. Participants.
Not for people born in our century, Steve.
Exactly. Agreed. Agreed entirely.
Not for me either, John.
Gabriel, where do you, where they don't even.
It would
Are
be
you on the list,
G-Padilla.
Gabriel? You see yourself on the list, Gabriel? That's weird. It's
If I
supposed to
keep
be,
talking, I probably pop up at front.
you're down on the list, you're down the list of G Padilla.
Yes.
It's not alphabetical. It's not alphabetical at all. So, here we go. You are now co-host, sir.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Certainly.
All right. And everyone see the plan?
Yes.
So from the last hearing we were still pending on the septic system that we could fit in the lot that would have defined if we could have add more bedrooms or not. The site is very limited in usable space for a septic system. So we did fit in a system with some upgrades. It's a Presby leaching system, which allows for a 40% reduction in leaching area and also a reduction in groundwater separation. And that was approved by the Board of Health during their last hearing, which I believe was the 16th of July. And that was the only pending issue that we had. Other than that, we did reduce the size of the building. Originally, I believe it was 43 feet on this end, and we cut about a foot off from this side to separate ourselves from the 25-foot non-disturbance zone, because that was one of the issues that was brought up during the first site visit, was that the building was too close to the 25-foot no disturb. So we went ahead and created a little bit of a separation there. I am trying to zoom in here, but all the controls are on the way. I'm sorry. So there we go. So we already went through the process with the Board of Health, and we got approval from them. And if there are any additional questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Now, help me out with the, I'm trying to read the 25-foot lines there. Is the dark brown section the addition?
Yes, the dark brown section is the addition. Originally, this line here was maybe a couple of inches away from this line, so we made it a full foot off of that line. Still, this is going to be a slab, so we won't have any deep cuts or anything like that around that area. And if there are any issues with constructability in that area, we could condition to other methods that won't disturb the 25-foot no disturb zone. We are not foreseeing any disturbance there, but in case that, we want to show that extra protection, we could do that.
I'm looking at the bottom, the bottom center. I see the dash line that says 25-foot non-disturbance, and you're outside of that. Thank you.
Yes.
What's the next hatched line? Dotted.
This one that.
See, I can't see your cursor. That's my problem.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's the 100-foot riverfront.
Oh. No, the next one up that goes through the house.
Oh, that's the 50-foot buffer.
Got it.
That's
Okay.
the 50-foot buffer line.
That's the one I was having trouble with. Okay, I've got it. So you're outside of the inner riparian?
Yes.
That's a 100-foot riverfront. Got it. All right.
Yeah, we are 118 feet away.
Got it. And for the public's benefit, we've been there, I don't know, at least twice, if not more, within the last few months.
Yes.
All right. And the issue, I think at one time, there was a historic issue in terms of the number of bedrooms versus the capacity of the leaching system or the septic system to accommodate that number of bedrooms. So
Yes.
how did that work out between the new system that you're using and has been approved by the Board of Health and the number of bedrooms?
The number of bedrooms will not change to what's existing right now. The house right now has 3 bedrooms. That will not change. And the amount of rooms do not go over the limit that what the original leaching field was designed for. So the original leaching field was designed for a 3-bedroom house. And that's what we kept. That's what we're keeping.
Okay. Questions from commissioners?
I have one. Is that a mounded system?
Yes, it is.
How high will a mound be?
It would go from 134 at the bottom here to a 136. So a 2-foot mound.
Gotcha. And you needed a mound in order to get that separation you were talking about?
That is correct.
Where was the system that failed?
So we had the area here where it says approximate location of failed leaching field.
Ah.
So the issue that they had was that the original engineer who designed the septic system miscalculated the groundwater elevation at that time. No one caught up on it until the system failed and was pretty much found to be at the groundwater. The way they fixed it is that they turned the septic tank and the pump chamber into a holding tank. And the house had been regularly maintaining that holding system up until they moved. And we integrated that in as part of our design to reuse those, the septic tank and the pump chamber after obviously some inspection, but we made sure that there was no work in that area, not to extend the work that we're already doing. So that was also part of the Board of Health application.
Thank you.
And Gene, what about the where the leaching field is going now? Are you losing any trees there? My memory is that there are a couple of small trees in that area.
There are a couple of small trees, but nothing major, no. So the big trees that are out in front are not being touched.
Right, and I recall those right along the driveway in.
Yes.
But do you have a replacement plan for the trees that you're removing for the leaching area?
We can definitely add those. I don't have the number of the trees that are being removed in that area, but we could add this area to the replication area if need be.
It's not the area that we need added, it's the replacement of the trees that we needed added. And our performance standard is to take the sum of the circumferences, and then replace with the same number of circumference inches. It doesn't matter how many trees. I mean, you could do, if it was 12 inches, you could do 2 6-inch trees, 1 12, or 4 3-inch trees.
Yeah, of course, we could definitely add that to the plan.
Okay. Steve, can you coordinate that in terms of that's just our regular performance standard, so I don't think it's particularly complicated. And if you can't find an appropriate landscaping placement on the site, we have what we call a virtual tree bank that you can just put the credit into the town, and the town can use it for street line trees or parks or Turner's Pond or whatever. But probably you could find a location on the site. It's a pretty site.
I'll be
Steve,
happy
can you
to do
coordinate
that.
that aspect
Yes.
of it?
Yes, Gabriel, you and I should get out there and take a look at the trees, okay? That's all. And maybe have some survey folks out there to locate the trees and we can figure out the sizes very easily. That's how I would do
Is
it.
that something, would that be something that the board could consider putting as a condition in the order of conditions?
Yes. Yeah, and we've done it in the past where we can vote. It's conditioned upon that compliance, so we don't have to slow the vote down. But I would like to hear from other commissioners if they have other or additional questions, as well as the butters and members of the public. And I know that there's a neighbor that's also got a mounted system just on the other side of the right of way, and I'm presuming that his still works appropriately.
That is correct. We actually designed that system too.
Oh, you did? Okay, good.
Some reassurance.
Commissioners, any questions? Yeah, I don't hear any abutters, members of the public who would like to ask a question or make a comment. I don't see anything, but that's because we're screen sharing, so I can't. Steve, you see any hands up?
I do not.
All right, hearing no further discussion, is there a motion to issue an order of conditions that in itself would be conditioned upon the compliance with our tree replacement policy? And then with the approval of the septic system that is in, Steve, you assured me today this is in full compliance with Title V requirements, correct?
Yes, as far as we know from the Board of Health, yes.
All right. So with that, the conditions of the tree, and then our usual conditions, and for the applicant's benefit, our usual conditions refer to that the equipment that you use during the construction phase cannot be stored overnight in our jurisdictional land, nor can refueling take place within that jurisdictional land. That's we call it the boilerplate conditions. Any other conditions that commissioners could think of? Not hearing any. Is there a motion to approve the order of conditions?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Todd?
Second.
And I'll second Todd.
All right. Any discussion? Hearing none, seeing no hands raised. Arthur, how do you vote?
Yes.
Todd, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ingrid, how do you vote?
Aye.
Tom, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I, John Kiernan, vote aye as well. So that's unanimous. Thank you very much, Gabriel.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
All right, good. Thanks all.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, next on the agenda is notice of intent 37 Troutbrook. That one is continued, which we announced previously. 9 on the agenda is notice of intent 107, 111 Highland Street, lot K-2-2. And Ned, let me ask you, did your folks, were they able to get into the Zoom meeting?
Yes, they were. Thank you.
Oh, that's great. Thank you very much. And now for the public's benefit, before we begin, I think I should alert people that at our previous public meeting, or a couple of the previous couple of meetings, we did discuss the need for retaining an expert in hydrology to be a consultant to the Conservation Commission. We did issue a scope of work, and essentially I'll inarticulately state this, but there are 2 general areas of concern. One of them is what we call a water budget for the vernal pool, which includes as part of that water in and water out of the watershed. And that is whether or not does it matter, as long as you measure all the water at the bottom of the hill. It doesn't matter whether it's coming in overland, coming through a pipe, is it an aquifer, is it groundwater, or are we safe in just measuring the water that's exiting the property at the bottom of the hill based on the presumption that water goes downhill? The other question, as part of the scope of work, was to see whether or not the foundation would create mounding of the groundwater, and if so, would that mounding impact the other side of the watershed divide? Now, the other side that I'm referring to is the other side of Highland Street that goes down Spafford Road, because we did hear some of the neighbors voicing concerns that they had flooding problems in the past, and they were concerned with increased flooding problems, and therefore with the mounding that was the result of, or could be the result of, any foundational work at the memory care center, would that impact the other watershed, that is the Spafford Road watershed? So that was given to Tetra Tech. Mr. Sean Reardon responded to our scope. Some of the delay has been that, as all things municipal, they result in contracts. So we had to send the contracts to the town council for approval. He in turn had to send it to the select board for approval to sign off on it. And by the way, for the town's benefit and the public's benefit, you should know that the applicant is actually paying for the consultant, even though the consultant is responding to the Conservation Commission. Now, the reason I'm saying this up front of tonight's discussion is because this was all done very recently. And I think Mr. Sean Reardon is here tonight that can probably respond to some of the questions. However, in fairness to the neighborhood, and there are some, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but if there's any opposition, some of the neighbors have voiced some concerns. So those that are voicing concerns should have an opportunity to respond to the written work from Tetra Tech and Mr. Reardon. So that I anticipate that after the discussion tonight, which will be verbal, we will continue this until the September meeting before any formal action is taken, because I would like to have, as part of the public record, the written report from Mr. Reardon and Tetra Tech. And of course, anyone in opposition to the project or anyone that wants to voice a concern would have an opportunity to review that report and respond to it. So with that said, essentially, it boils down to, we've got some questions out for Mr. Reardon. I'd like to hear his responses to those questions. And then I anticipate that others may weigh in and make some comments or ask some additional questions. But I do anticipate that we'll probably end up moving this case until the September meeting. Mr. Reardon.
If I may also, John, just as a preview, we did file some amended plans with the commission that address some additional impacts associated with fire access and fire safety access to the building that were reviewed with Mr. Reardon and with the fire chief. But there's some additional, we think, minor impacts to wetland and 25-foot no disturb areas, and we're prepared to show those to you tonight as well.
All right, well, you may want to start with that, Ned, and then we can go to Sean's response to the scope of work presented to him by the Conservation Commission. So why don't you start, Ned, and give us your revised plans?
Sure. And if Steve, if you could make Paul Avery a co-host, he can share the screen.
I think I already can, Ned.
You have, okay.
Yes, I did that when you were speaking earlier.
Great.
I can proceed then. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So we have been working over the past several weeks, whenever we last before the commission here, closely with Tetra Tech and also the fire chief to resolve and resolve the issues and comments that were before us. We have, I think, and Sean can disagree with me if he wishes to, but I think we've reached that point here, and in doing so have, as Ned pointed out, prepared some updated documents which have been submitted. I can just quickly walk through. There are really 5 noteworthy changes to the plans that are summarized in the transmittal letter, and I can just walk through those quickly so that everyone is aware of what they are, and then we can proceed on from there. The first one is that we went and pinned down the details on these retaining walls. And we've decided to go with a Ready Rock system, which is a gravity block system for a couple of reasons. One is it's one of the primary ones is that it can be constructed from the inside. We don't need to go beyond the limits of work to place it. So the plans now reflect, we went back and forth with the engineer for Ready Rock to understand exactly what the structural requirements for this would be, with setbacks for things like guardrails and light poles. And the plans now accurately reflect how these walls would lay out. I'm going to jump to this section right here, 1C05. So the cross section I'm about to put up here is looking through the road here, looking back towards Highland Street. And this is pretty much it, so that you can see that the wall consists of these block systems. What we've done, a couple things, all these, as I pointed out, these distances here from the face of the wall for things like light poles and guardrails and site fence have all been reviewed by the Ready Rock engineer. We did everything we could to narrow the width on this to the point that on the side that doesn't have the sidewalk, we've basically just extended a wall parapet up instead of putting in a guardrail, which saves us width, because the guardrail would need to be a certain distance off the curb, and then the face of the wall needs to be a certain distance beyond that. So we did everything we've done to minimize the width of this. And these, if you look at this in section, they can be installed from the inside. So this can be constructed, from within the area here that's called out as granular fill by, placing these blocks down and starting to do the fill and work, from the inside out without having to, go beyond the limits of work to with equipment to install the wall system. So that's the first one. The second change here is we spent a lot of time trying to work out ways to improve access to the site and maneuverability, particularly of the ladder truck for the fire truck. The result is this traffic circle configuration that we've gone through this now. Ladder trucks can come in through here and make complete turns without any backup maneuvers or hitting any bollards or parked cars or light poles or anything like that. So a fair amount of effort went into getting this configuration that satisfies those concerns. In doing this red line here, we do, and I'll put another slide up here in a second here. We do have some additional work. This is out further than it was before within the non-disturbance zone, and also a small area of additional wetlands fill. But we went to great lengths here to make sure that this did not go beyond this red line here, which is the 100-foot buffer zone for the vernal pool. So this drawing, which we had prepared before, is the one that summarizes our wetlands impacts and mitigations. These numbers are all consistent with what we had before, but they've been updated. The red areas here, number 1A, 1B, and then this one up here is the new one as a result of the traffic circle, which is 1C, an additional 63 square feet. And then as we move to the back of the site, we have area 2. The green areas are the areas of proposed replication. Those are the same as what we had before. These numbers, I think they changed a little bit, but they're basically the same. This table here summarizes what we now have, the sum of the 1A, 1B, 1C, and area 2 for a total of 1791 square feet of wetlands fill, offset by 4125 of replication, which gives us a 2.3 to 1 replication ratio. So this drawing isn't really anything new other than the fact that it's just been updated to reflect the change in layout, how the wall actually ended up, and some of the additional expansion here that was required to improve access and public safety. Okay.
Paul, what is the square footage of the non-disturbed zone?
We never took those numbers off, so I don't know. I mean, we always had work within the non-disturbance zone to make the crossing here.
Of course, right.
Right. So, I guess, I could go.
One of your diagrams, it looks like this, but it was that darker red lines showed it. It was one of the ones that you had up.
Right. I could find that one if you gave me a minute at some point to call it back up. And that was mostly prepared to for the purpose of showing how, the alignment that we took was proposed because it minimized the impacts. So that,
No, I understood that. I was just
Yeah,
trying to get
yeah.
an actual measure on that area.
yeah, so I don't have a number for what the non-disturbance zones were before and what they are now. We never actually quantified that. If there's a request to do so, I could certainly do it.
Not for all of it, because I understand the whole, concept of a limited project when you're crossing a wetland. So I'm, I'm more concerned with the wetlands than I am with the buffer, with the 25-foot non-disturb. But when you increase the circle, there was just a small area of land that intruded as to allow the fire trucks to make the turn. It went and it looked like, I don't know, I'm just going to guess 6 or 7 feet.
Oh, it went all of that.
What's that?
It went all of that. Okay, so this circle here is quite a bit larger, and to fit it in, we also dropped 2 of the parking spaces. So if I go back a slide, this is now 11 parking spaces. It used to be 13.
Understood. So where's the area of?
I would. Can you see my little hand cursor here?
I can. I think I'm actually looking at the 100 feet, 100 foot from the vernal pool.
That's this red line here.
Yes. So it's the top. That's the area that I'd like a measurement on.
Well, we don't impact it.
Yeah.
So this red line here, there's 2 red lines. They look the same. The one, if you can follow the hand here, this one that goes like this. Are you following that?
Yeah. No, I am. I was thinking
that's the 100 vernal.
Is the blue line the new circle, or is that just
the blue line is just highlighted to show highlighting the area where we've made the changes.
Okay, so you're still outside of the 100-foot line from the vernal pool.
Yeah, so the blue circle isn't part of the plan. The blue is just an aid to show, focus your eye on the area that's changed.
Got it.
Okay.
Thanks, Paul.
All right. Okay. We're clear on this.
Yes.
So for each one of these, and the next one I did the same thing. So I just used the blue circle as a form of highlighting.
Understood. I appreciate it. Thank you.
So this would then be the third area, also just kind of to draw your eye to it, highlighted or circled with a blue circle. What we did here, again, to improve access for emergency vehicles and give room for more than one vehicle to be down here, and a fire truck to be parked and another vehicle to come down and leave, or whatever, is we increased the width of this to 24 feet. Okay. We also expanded some of the maneuvering area in this one down here within the service area, but this change did not go beyond the 25-foot non-disturbance zone. So you can see that all this work is still beyond it, with the exception of the fact that we bit off a little bit of the non-disturbance here, which was, part of just increasing the radius of this current turn here to accommodate the vehicle. So, it's the throat of the limited project access, if you will, that got expanded just to improve the accessibility through here. It just has a couple feet in this corner here that went into the non-disturbance, where I believe we were more or less right on the line before, or slightly beyond it, but we're not into the wetlands in this area. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, that's number 3. Number 4, also public safety input, was to provide this walk through here that connects the northern terrace area with the middle terrace area. Previously, these were disconnected. This, as you can see, and I've got another diagram. I'm going to go to the next slide here. That without this, what would happen is, for the fire department, if they need to get in here with fire hoses, without this connector here, what they would need to do is bring up the truck down into the service area, and then they need to pull the hose all the way up and around this magenta path line here to get at this area. Okay. This is compliant, but it's inconvenient. What happens now with the alternative plan is, now with these being connected, rather than having to go down and back up again, they can just park the ladder truck right up in this area and get access to this area following the blue line. Okay, so this is the reason to improve public safety and fire department access to this area of the building by providing connectivity between these two terrace areas. All right. So I'm going to go back a couple slides. This one, to make this happen, we did have this little small piece right in here, you know, the red line, and then there's the retaining wall there. This little small area here is a small encroachment in the non-disturbance zone to enable this to happen. Okay. Questions on that one?
What's the size of that small encroachment?
Oh, I don't know. It's probably 4 feet wide by 12 feet long. I'm just guessing. 50, 60, I think it's less than 100 square feet. I haven't quantified it.
What's it made out of?
Well, so we've got the retaining wall here, and then this would be a concrete walk here. Previously, the wall butted into the building, I think like right here. And then we cut it off. There's a door, there's an egress here. So previously this walk ended right where my hand is, if you can see it. And then I think this wall came straight across so that, you know, this connection here wasn't here. And, you know, this was requested by Tetra Tech and the fire chief to just improve fire department access. Okay with this one for now? Should I move on?
Yeah, I'm good if you move on. Yeah, any questions thus far, commissioners? Why don't you move on and then we can take public comment.
Yeah, I've only got one more. Okay, so the last one is up in this infiltration basin. The way this was designed before was this overflow spillway was actually serving as an outlet for the pond, the basin. We've now made this overflow and spillway into something that would only come into play in emergencies only. We replicated the hydraulic performance of all of this with an outlet structure and a piped outfall that will serve this, and it functions basically the same way. This overflow spillway is at an elevation which is just above the 100-year storm. So the peak storm that we modeled in, this doesn't come into play, so that it would need something greater than a 100-year storm before the emergency overflow where this spillway happened. And then we provided a foot of freeboard above that. So the crest of this pond, the basin here, used to be at 124. Now the spillway is at 124 and the crest is actually up at 125. So the rest of this basin is exactly the same as it was, but we're bringing it up higher, and then we have to slope it down further so that the extents of the earthwork have extended out further than they did before. Most of this isn't an issue out here because we're well beyond all the non-disturbance zones, but it became a little bit of a problem here where we've got this swale that's coming in. And rather than have the grading go over into the non-disturbance zone, we just put up a short section of this ready rock containment wall that's only about 1 to 2 feet high. We could grade this out, but it would require doing the grading into the non-disturbance zone. So seeking to avoid that, we're proposing just a small little section of wall in here instead. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
And that's it. That summarizes the noteworthy plan changes since our last submission.
All right, thank you. And that has been submitted as part of the public record and is available for public inspection.
Yep.
in hard copy, and we're working diligently, the whole town is, to digitize all of our records. So hopefully it'll be easier for public access, but it is definitely available to the public to inspect all of these plans, and including the revisions.
John, I also shared that with all of the abutters and their lawyers.
Good, thanks, Ned, for doing that. All right, this may be, we may get some questions out of this, but I'd like to ask Sean Reardon to weigh in on the questions and the scope of work that the Conservation Commission presented to Tetra Tech for his response. And I'd also, even before you start, I'll tell you at the end of what you have, whatever you say, I'm going to say, does any of that change based upon these revisions? So Sean, can you help us out and then give us sort of the preliminary answers? I know your report has not been finalized, and maybe you could tell us at the end of your presentation when we could expect that report.
Sure. So just in the way of introduction, my name's Sean Reardon. I've been hired along with the staff that supports me to assist the commission with the items that the chairman mentioned. It's important for people to notice we've been reviewing this project for several months now in a similar capacity with the planning board. As part of that review, it included detailed review of the drainage design, detailed review of all the site layout. So the information that Paul just relayed to you about the changes emanating from a discussion between us, the applicant, and the fire chief, all accurately stated. So all of those changes were predicated on sort of a discussion with the fire chief and I about access and what would serve the fire chief's needs the best. And like I mentioned, so we're really familiar with all the drainage design. This is not our understanding is not a cursory understanding, although our role with the commission is new. We're well informed about everything that's going on out here and all the design that feeds into it. So to just get to the chairman's questions, first on the water budget issue and the vernal pool, the critical thing here is that there's been no changes in the drainage area that serves the vernal pool in terms of its extent. So all of the area that used to drain to the vernal pool still does. Now there are changes within that zone that change the hydrology a bit, but all of that's been mitigated according to the stormwater standards in the handbook. So everything that they're changing, they've mitigated for properly as far as we're concerned. And then most importantly, they haven't done anything to change the outlet conditions of the pond. So really from a hydraulic standpoint and from a water budget standpoint, any changes to the vernal pool are de minimis and inconsequential from our position. As it relates to the second question about whether the foundation has the potential to impact the water table beyond, let's say, beyond the limits of the property, not just whether it's beyond to a different watershed. The key thing to understand here is groundwater moves extremely slow. So fast groundwater moves about a foot a day. So as you can imagine, that's pretty slow and doesn't have much velocity. So when you introduce a foundation into that sort of low velocity movement of water, you don't have very much buildup, if any. And it's a similar situation we dealt with on a recent 40B project on Blue Hill Avenue that we were reviewing for the ZBA. It was a similar question that came up, and our hydrogeologist looked at it and said, no, because the water table moves so slowly, and because these foundations are so small in comparison to the size of the underground water supply, there are no perceptible impacts to the groundwater table as a function of the foundations being installed within them. So you can rest assured that certainly there won't be any changes to sort of any of the groundwater conditions surrounding the site as a function of the installation of the foundation systems.
Well, specifically though, if there is some mounding, could it result in the water changing the watershed in which it finds itself? And what I'm really looking for, it appears from the maps that we've seen and the applicant has produced, that there is one watershed on the Reedsdale Road side of Highland Street. That would be going down Spafford Road. And there's a different watershed on the Winter Valley side of Highland Street. so the question came up as well, if the water gets pushed back and the level goes up, could it go actually up over the top of the divide, which would be Highland Street? As I understand it, that's where the divide is.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. We're talking sort of gross magnitudes of scale difference. So for example, the only mounding that's going to take effect on this site is mounding that results from the infiltration systems. So as part of the mitigation for stormwater, for their increase in impervious surface, they have to design a system that infiltrates the water into the ground. The only mound you're going to get on the site is from that infiltration system. And that mound will be confined to no bigger than 15 feet beyond the limits of that infiltration system. So any groundwater mound is going to be very localized. And certainly there's nothing happening on this site that could sort of create groundwater repercussions to the extent that you're describing. And to answer your last question too, about none of the changes that were described by Paul would affect these opinions either.
All right, and I know you used a term which we had requested that you use, which was the water budget. You know, how much water in, how much water out. But the same for the vernal pool. But really, the same question pertains to the whole watershed. And because we've had, some questions raised about, well, does it matter whether or not it's sheet flow on top of the ground? Is it whether it's groundwater, whether it's coming in from a pipe, or whether it's coming in from the rain, the clouds above? And my question to you is, as long as you can measure all the water at the bottom of the hill, does it matter whether it comes by way of sheet flow or groundwater or pipe or daylighted stream?
It does, but only in the sense of, a term that people probably are familiar with is peak runoff. So our principal concern when it comes to those kind of things that you describe is how fast is water getting to a particular point under post-development conditions versus pre-development conditions. So the idea being is when you pave, say, a parking lot, you change woods to pave a parking lot. What happens is you generate a lot more runoff and a lot faster. So what ends up, like, if not mitigated, that will create increased flooding downstream. So the whole premise for the stormwater management standards in the stormwater handbook is to have principles and design tools to mitigate that. And that's what's been done on this site. So really all the changes in the way water gets there is really it manifests itself in sort of in terms of timing, but it still rains the same, right? It's the same amount of precipitation that's hitting the ground. And the stormwater standards make sure that they have mitigation in place that sort of, as much as can possibly be done, is to match what the pre-development conditions are, so that all those things are sort of matched from how it is now to how it will be in the future. Just a little bit different method for doing it.
All right, thank you. Questions from commissioners? I hear none. Are there questions from abutters or comments? I see hands raised going from left to right. Georgia Lee.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Oh, thank you. So Paul, you were talking about an emergency spillway, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay. What happens in the case of an emergency spillway need? Where does the water go, and what constitutes an emergency? And I believe that today we saw 4 inches of rain in 90 minutes in various parts of Massachusetts. And I was told anecdotally that one part of Massachusetts north of Boston received 8 inches of rain in 2 hours. Is that an emergency?
Well, it's hard to say whether that's an emergency or not. And what we're designed about is various established storms that are published as having 2, 10, 25, and 100-year return frequencies. We use the NOAA standards on that, which is slightly higher rainfall rates than I think what are typically used here. So the maximum storm that we ran for this thing was the 100-year storm, according to NOAA. And the level in that basin did not rise to the elevation at which we have set the emergency spillway. In the event of a larger storm that did go over, it would just flow over this spillway and go the same way as it did before. The prior models actually had a spillway as the single outlet. So the base, all it does is basically what we did is we provided freeboard of a foot. That's the big change, and have a more controlled outlet structure than the spillway, which is they're normally built for exactly this condition, the storm that exceeds what we've designed it for, which is the 100-year storm. But again, it all just continues, it all ends up in the same place.
And George, I can add to that too. The emergency spillway, it's a term that's used in the design handbook. And what it's for is that what you don't want to have happen is you don't want to have the basin design so that there's always going to be some event that could exceed what the basin's designed for. And what you want to do is make sure that spills over the top of the basin in a controlled way. Otherwise, it could erode the banks of the basin. So really, it's just it's another level of control to make sure that when and if something does happen, it's done in a controlled way.
So remind me what the basin is made out of.
The basin is basically made out of some granular material placed over the existing soil that it's designed to infiltrate. And the bottom of it would be vegetated so that the water that comes into it will percolate down through and infiltrate into the soils below.
So what does granular material mean?
It's dirt.
Sandy.
Okay.
It's made out of soil.
So
dirt. Yeah.
Are the plants responsible for holding the dirt in place?
Excuse me?
Vegetation. Are we talking about?
Oh, no, it's got no place to go. I mean, the side slopes on it need to be vegetated to be stabilized, right? I mean, if there's nothing growing on them, but so that they'll need to be loamed and seeded, which is called for in the plans. And then they're not that big that the vegetation should stabilize them.
How many 100-year storms have we had in the last year?
I have no idea. So a 100-year storm, in this case, I could tell you what it is, but it's something like 6 or 8 inches or something like that in a 24-hour period.
So we've had one of those today in Massachusetts.
Well, we may have.
You have to be.
But I mean, the term itself is problematic because I think we're going to see a lot of quote unquote emergencies because the definition is outdated given the weather changes that we're seeing. And I'm just, as a downstream neighbor, I'm concerned about plants and dirt holding back the water.
Well, keep in mind that what we've
that's
designed
what holds the water now.
Yeah, we've designed it so that it's not going to increase the peak runoff. So if we're seeing greater rainfall that results in greater runoff, that is going to be a condition we're dealing with, regardless of this project. Our responsibility is to design it to mitigate those impacts in accordance with the established rules.
I hear you, but I just want to point out that the trees that are going to get cut down are now a mitigation factor in place in situ. And as we remove those and put hardscaping in, a lot of the mitigations that are in place currently are going to be gone.
And the model accounts for that.
Okay, I just needed to ask. Thank you.
Yep, okay.
Thank you, Georgia. Bard, are you there? You're on mute, Bard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, everyone. I'd actually like to go after Mr. Scott Horsley, if I could.
Doesn't matter to me. Scott, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me okay? You able to hear me okay? Mr. Chairman?
Scott, we can't hear you. Or at least I cannot hear you.
I am unmuted here.
Still cannot hear you.
Unmuted. Can you hear me now?
Very, very slightly.
Let me try my headphones, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry.
Chairman?
Yes.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened there. Mr. Chairman, I did submit a comment letter on June 15th regarding this project. And with your permission, I'd like to take about 5 minutes and go through that letter. I do have about 6 slides that will help me explain the comments. If I may share my screen.
Sure.
Thank you.
We are appreciative of your input, and we'll be appreciative of your brevity as well, Scott.
I understand that, and I am just looking. I think I need to be unable to share, maybe. I don't see it.
Steve, can you help? Steve, you're on mute if you're speaking. We making any progress?
I don't see.
Steve Ivas, you're on mute if you're giving instructions.
Steve's not hearing us.
No, I know.
He is talking though. Who reads
I know.
lips?
I know.
Steve, you're on mute.
I had the same problem. I was muting and unmuting, Mr. Chairman. It didn't make any difference until I put my headphones on, which I don't understand at all, but he may be having the same difficulty I was.
Yeah.
Unmute. Okay. It took me a while to find me. Yes,
Okay.
Scott, you should be okay now. Try it.
I did not see anything that says share a screen yet. Usually it pops up here, Steve.
Hang on a second. I'll do it again.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it says remove co-host permissions. So you should have the co-host permission right now.
Wow, I use Zoom every day.
Try to move your mouse around. Sometimes the bottom ruler hides itself. If you move your mouse.
Yeah, I have the bottom ruler showing, but I do not see any.
Tell you what, I'm going to remove it and go back again. Okay.
And if we can't do this, I'll do this verbally. I apologize.
Hang on a second. I'm apologizing too. I'm going to find you again, and I'm making you a co-host again, Scott. We'll try this again.
All right.
Yep.
Let me just
Do I want to make it? Just made you co-host again.
Okay.
No kidding.
I'm still not seeing it, so I'm just going to do this verbally. I apologize again. Very odd.
Georgia Lee says it worked. It's on the upper right of her screen. Interesting.
Yeah, no, I don't have it. And like I say, believe me, I use this thing almost every day. So something odd here, but that's okay. Let me, I know it's late, so let me do this verbally. I did submit a letter June 15th. I do have some questions and concerns. And I'll just start with, in my letter, as the applicant has suggested, we have a very significant increase in impervious surfaces, as one of the abutters just indicated. I should also mention I'm working for Hill Law on this project, who is representing some of the abutters. We are seeing a significant amount of impervious surface increase, which I think everybody knows. The stormwater report does indicate that the amount of infiltration is going to exceed, their own words, the required amount. The required amount is 1950 cubic feet, 7,940 are provided. My interpretation of standard number 3, which by the way, I drafted for Mass DEP, serving on the Stormwater Committee, is, as I think the chairman said earlier, the intent here is to balance, and I think Sean said it too, to balance pre and post, to make them, that means to make them the same. This is a hugely significant increase in the amount of stormwater going into the ground. And while I do agree that the amount of rainfall will stay the same, the amount of recharge going into the ground will increase substantially. And this is going to cause groundwater mounding, as you pointed out, Mr. Chairman. I have done some preliminary mounding calculations because I do recognize that the applicant is indicating they have 4.1 or 4.2 feet to groundwater. And they may be suggesting that therefore they don't need to do mounding, and prescriptively that may be true. But by the fact that they're increasing the amount of overall recharge, I think it would be wise, and I applaud your request to the peer reviewer to do the hydrologic budget and to look at the mounding. And I believe you include the foundation of the building, which I think is an excellent idea as well. I've done some preliminary groundwater mounting analysis using whatever available data is on the site, and it does show mounting at the wetland boundary, somewhere around 0.5, 0.6 feet, depending on the inputs that are used. And I believe that is in excess of what the requirements are. So I think that a groundwater mounting analysis, I am obviously not doing this for the applicant. They should do their own. I hope they don't suggest that they shouldn't do one because, again, certainly the chair has already mentioned that. And given the amount of recharge, it would certainly be worth doing. My own calculations suggest that, in fact, there will be changes in the wetland boundary. I'll just reference the stormwater handbook, and it indicates, and I'll just quote here: the mounding analysis must also show that the groundwater mound that forms under the recharge system will not break out above the land or water surface of a wetland (parentheses BVW). So what that's suggesting is we need to look at water level changes at the BVW boundary. The mounding analysis will provide that. I have done my mounding analysis, and certainly there are multiple ways to do these with various inputs. So it would be worth comparing what I've done with the applicant's mounding analysis once they have that available for review. So I will leave that at that. My second comment, and the last one, is regarding the hydrologic budget to the vernal pool. While I agree that, again, the rainfall will stay the same and the watershed will stay the same, I think the abutter who spoke about the removal of trees is an important point, because when you take down a lot of trees, you change the evapotranspiration rates, you change the recharge rates, and in effect, you change the hydrologic budget. I believe that is what you are asking for, Mr. Chairman. I've heard you at many meetings, I think it's excellent where you ask, where is the water going to go? A hydrologic budget makes a lot of sense. I have prepared, again, a preliminary one, which suggests that the amount of water moving to this vernal pool will be increased by a factor of about 50%, 50, which is pretty significant. Certainly meets the definition of an alteration under the wetland regulations. And I would also add that the analysis I did was seasonal. I looked at it in quarters, winter, spring, summer, and fall. And I would suggest, given, as Steve knows very well, the sensitivity of a vernal pool is very much seasonally specific. So this should be more, in my own opinion, this should be more than an annual hydrologic budget. It should be a seasonal one, which is what I provided in my letter. And I will stop there because, again, this is hard to do without the slides, and I know it's late, but those are my two comments: groundwater mounding and the hydrologic budget of the vernal pool. It sounds like that's what you're asking for, Mr. Chairman, and I hope you get it. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, Scott, I do have a question. When you say that in your mounding analysis, or at least your preliminary, you found like a 0.5 to 0.6 feet mounding at the boundary.
At the wetland.
I don't know what you mean by the boundary.
I'm sorry, at the wetland boundary.
At the wetland boundary. All right. I had asked a specific question of Sean Reardon, and that related to whether or not the mounding could, I'm going to use the word, it's probably not a technical word, but overtop the watershed divide. And that may not be going over the top of Highland Street and going down Spafford Road, but the question pertains to whether or not that kind of mounding at the edge of the boundary of the wetlands would be sufficient to, as I use the term, overtop the watershed.
Yeah, that is something that I have not looked at. So we'll have to see what the applicant can provide on that. It's a good question, but it's something that I have not looked at. I did also, the mounding analysis does calculate the rise in groundwater beneath the system. And that also suggests that it will come in contact with the infiltration system, which I believe is at about 4 foot separation right now. So that'll be another consideration, but I did not look at any changes with watershed divides as you're asking.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Any questions from commissioners? All right, before we ask for any comments from the public, Bard, I think you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Scott. I'd like to just echo some of the concerns that my neighbor Georgia Lee mentioned. I live at 11 Spafford Road, so I think my house is at about an elevation of 100, 110 feet according to the maps. So we're about 20, 30 feet below the site, and obviously, we're maybe a little bit further away than farther away than Georgia, but we have almost all year round, our systems, our drains, our pumps are running to keep water at bay here. And as you've heard from me before, and it's interesting because it's not, it's obviously storm water, but the pumps run the most the day after the storm, or even 2 days after a storm. So it's water that's coming down the hill as it slowly makes its way towards our property. That is, then rising and having to be, pumped out away from the foundation and so forth. And so I know almost all my neighbors have this issue. I know people have various French drains to keep all this at bay. So it is a very serious concern for a lot of us. And,
But can I start? And I don't mean to throw you off track, but do you agree that you're in a different watershed?
Well, I guess it depends on what you mean by watershed. I mean, are we talking the Neponset River watershed, or just, we're at a lower elevation, and a lot of the water that comes down from the top of the hill overflows the storm drains on Reedsdale Road. So once the water enters the ground, it's going to go, that the Highland Street and its pavement, and then a few feet of dense grade or whatever's under there is not stopping water from going underneath it. So.
But do you agree with the concept, though, that the water, if you're on Highland Street looking at Canton Avenue, looking towards the police station, the water to your left is going down towards Wendell Park. The water to the right is going down towards Reedsdale Road. That's why I asked the question about.
Yes, but
I just want to make sure I'm asking the right question.
Yes, but to take a step back, Mr. Chairman, I think, so I'm not just speaking for myself. I'm speaking for, a lot of my neighbors on all along Highland Street who have this issue. And the edge of the wetland as it is today is right up against Highland Street. And it's only about 30 or 40 feet from the properties of people like Mr. Irwin, the O'Briens, the Fioravantis, who currently today have water issues. So now what we're talking about is over 80,000 square feet of land. A lot of it is upland to them. Into this wetland that is very close to their houses is now going to be gone. It's all going to be impervious, and 300 trees, or I forget the exact number, the latest number, gone. And so the recharge, as Scott has mentioned, is going to be huge into those areas right directly along close to people's houses. So this is a very serious concern. And what I'm seeing, and I do appreciate. The work that's been done to widen the driveway, because obviously one of the concerns a number of people have raised is, how difficult the access is and how limited the site access was previously. So that, it makes sense. However, the way it's been done, it's my other comment is, it seems like it's been done by entering the 25-foot non-disturbance zone in many places. And we call it minor, but even the retaining walls that run right along the boundary are in some places 10 feet high. As I understand it, non-disturbance means you can't shade those areas. You can't put a huge retaining wall right on the boundary. So the solution to widening the roadway shouldn't be let's increase the footprint even more and go even further up against the wetlands. It should probably be let's shrink the building a little bit so we can fit all this in. Because 25 feet is not much. It's really, it's one side of my living room to the other, and maybe even less than that. That's why a lot of towns you're seeing are going with 50-foot no build. And even places are saying, respecting the 100 feet non-disturbance, because the value of these wetlands is so significant, and it will be even more so going forward in the future. And these standards are decades old. So the storm 7+ inches in Billerica today, areas that are not in floodplains are flooding. What we saw in Vermont last month, they've had 200-year storms in the last few years. We should be planning for the future and recognizing that, the solution here isn't to widen the roadway so we're now in violation of our even bare minimum bylaw. It should be that we should be more responsible. So thank you for that. And I'll let everyone go because I know we'll have time in the in September.
All right, thank you, Bart, very much. Comments from commissioners, members of the public. Seeing none, with the assent of the applicant, we will continue this to the September meeting, and we anticipate that Sean Reardon will have report for us, but in sufficient time so we can have a chance to look at it before the meeting.
Absolutely. And if would you like a response to Mr. Horsley's comments as well as part of that letter?
That would be very helpful, Sean. Yes.
Sure.
All right. Thank you very much. With the assent of the applicant, then we'll continue this until, tell me again, I've lost the date. Is it the 12th of September?
September
Yes.
12th.
September 12th. All right. Thank you very much all.
You have our assent. Thank you.
All right. Next on the agenda is, we can do 10 and 11 together. That's notice of intent, 25 Guile Road, Lower Guile Field. Continued hearing and informational, 25 Guile Road, Grass for Guile, continued hearing. Those go together. And again, as I did with the previous application, I want to get the public up to speed as to what we've been doing. And I think I announced this at the July meeting, and that was that we, the Conservation Commission, had sought the assistance of, I guess, two experts. One is a hydrologist, and the other one would be an environmental chemist. The scope of work, which I described at the last meeting, and it's actually part of the public record, so people can inspect it. There are 10 areas, subject areas. Because of the size of it, I did talk to town council about this, and he said, well, it's going to be more than $10,000. So you can't just, send it to one responsible bidder. You have to put it out to a number of different people. We did send it out to 5 different experts. We have received some word from everybody. One withdrew. We have an initial proposal from Tetra Tech that I have submitted to town council with a proposed contract. Town council now has that. They've made some adjustments. I don't think the adjustments or proposed revisions, I'll call them, going back to Tetra Tech, because the process requires that it get the approval of town council and then go for approval to the town, the select board. Because in this case, because the applicant is the town via the park department, the town has to pay for the consultant for the Conservation Commission. And because of the anticipated cost being in excess of 10,000, we had to send it out to a number of different people. We have heard back from one, that's Tetra Tech. We are awaiting a response. I've had some conversations with GCA, and they said that they are in the process of getting us a proposal. And I sent it to Mike Mobile from
McDonald Morrison.
McDonald Morrissey. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Ray. McDonald Morrissey. And I sent it to Scott Horsley, and I sent it to Michelle Snyder Cologne. And her company, AECon, has withdrawn their proposal, or they didn't have a proposal. They've withdrawn from the running. So we're still awaiting that. Yeah, I know from some folks' perspective, this may be, more municipal slowdown. It's not. I mean, we've got municipal bidding rules to comply with. Town council is involved, and they're working on it right now. We do have a response already for Tetra Tech, but I anticipate that we will have a decision and hopefully some progress made by September 12th. But as of tonight, we do not. The commission has continued to receive comments from interested people, stakeholders. We've received a tremendous amount of information coming from all parties, and be assured that we have read them. And I think with that kind of background, I've tried to keep everybody apprised of what's happening. And I did, I guess, in defense of our trying to dot the I's and cross the T's on this issue, there's some legitimate questions that have been raised, and we're trying to do the right thing, we, the Conservation Commission. But in terms of the slowdown, I did make an inquiry as to whether or not, even if we had issued the permit in July, could it have been installed for the fall season? And the answer was no. So I don't think we're doing anything at this juncture to slow something down that would have happened in September or October. I think we're off until 2024 in any event. That's not a reason for the slowdown, but it's a consequence of the slowdown. And I shouldn't even use that phrase. because we're trying to do the right thing, get the right experts on board to make sure that we're not making a situation, meaning our environment, worse. And we're pretty sensitive to that. We're pretty careful about it. And that's sort of the prelude to our discussion tonight, because I'm not sure we're going to be able to make any progress. The questions have been framed. The answers have not yet been received. Having said that, Chris Huntress, do you want to make some comments, make an opening? There have been some questions raised. You've seen the scope of work, so you know what the commission is interested in. Basically, there are two big areas that we're looking at. One is temperature of the water. Are we heating Pine Tree Brook? Are we heating a cold water fishery in the deposit? That one, I think that the water is going to be hot, but I think there's probably a workaround on that one. From our perspective, as we discussed in July, that would be you simply detain the water. Could be an underground chamber until it cools off before it's discharged into the river. And Pine Tree Brook is considered as a perennial stream. It is under the Rivers Protection Act. That may be easier to handle than the filtration component. The question is, are we adding to the net contamination level of PFAS? And if so, are we still under the hazard index or the health index and the new one that should come out this month from EPA and presumably also from DEP? And if we are adding to that contamination load, is there a way to filter it out? And if so, what's the cost of that? Is it a practical solution or is it impractical? Those are the questions that have gone out to the experts. We think we're doing the right thing. With that background, either Kevin Chisholm for Parks or Chris Huntress, do you want to address the issue that's before us tonight?
I'm happy to, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Thanks for having me on, Chris Huntress with Huntress Sports. Really nothing to offer tonight. We have no presentation planned. We respect the commission's efforts to do their due diligence, and we're happy that you're moving forward with that. So whatever we can do to help you in your process by providing information or data that we haven't already maybe provided to the commission, I think we've given you everything. But if there's anything you need, please let us know. We're happy to participate in whatever way we can to make sure you get the answers that you're looking for.
All right, thanks. And I should say, for the public's benefit, as we get proposals in, they become immediately part of the public record. And Philip Driscoll, if you're still you're still ready to respond to this, what's the best way for the public to see these? I mean, do they have to literally go to DEP to see the public file? And for the public's benefit, we, the town officials, are working to try to get a better system of digitizing our records to make them accessible to, over the internet. We're trying to get up to the 21st century. I know we're a bit behind, but Philip, if somebody walks in the door and says, "Can I see the proposal from Tetra Tech?" Are they available in your office?
I believe they are. Excuse me, I believe they are.
That's perfect.
Available in my office.
All right, and that's 629 Randolph Avenue, correct?
Correct.
All right, that's for the public's benefit. I don't know if there's an official person that wants to respond. Paul, I know that you usually have some thoughts. Do you want to speak to this? Because I think we're all waiting for additional data.
Right, that's the way we feel about it too. And again, we'd like to thank the commission for taking such a careful and deliberate and thoughtful approach to all this. We appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Paul. Now I saw oh, there you are, Mary Farabend.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mary.
All right, well, thank you for giving me a moment. I would just like to say that I am in support of this turf project at Lower Guile Field. And I'd like to highlight the irresponsible use of town money by the Conservation Committee as they shop for answers. Conservation is spending over $10,000 of town money to duplicate testing already done by Huntress. The Parks Department had to suspend all youth sports at the field behind Pierce this summer in order to resod the middle portion of the field. However, this same department did not have enough money to resod the entire field, only the middle. We are ready to spend over $10,000 to duplicate testing because some people didn't like the results of the original test. If we're talking about trusting science, then trust all the science. It's important to note that Grass for Guile supporters are largely comprised of members from the Pine Tree Brook neighborhood that directly abuts the brook. They claim that child safety and concern for the brook are their primary concerns. By their own admission, many of these neighbors are less than 100 feet from the edge of the brook. These same families, now with older kids, once happily had kids playing on Milton Academy and Milton High School turf fields. No opposition was heard then. We have proven to this committee that this project exceeds the current fed, state, and town setback requirements for wetlands. This group also disingenuously claims to support a project for Low Guile Field if grass is used instead. We believe this is obstructionism disguised as environmentalism. The real reason they want grass is to limit the usage of the field to one sport, only played in the fall. They do not want year-round use of this field by our youth athletes. Town Progress and this committee are being held hostage to a neighborhood group that claims child safety and environmentalism at its core values. As its core virtues. These ideals are not limited to a single neighborhood like their group largely is. We all care about our kids and the environment. Lastly, this is an equity issue above all other issues. Milton Academy has an all-weather track incredibly close to a pond, much closer than this field will ever be to Pine Tree Brook. The materials used to make an all-weather track are very similar in nature to that of a turf field. These families' children that attend or attended Milton Academy had access to several turf fields and an all-weather track, yet the Milton Public School children are being denied the same equitable access and opportunities because this project is too close to their homes. The opposition to this project wants to pick and choose when they want to listen to science and favors dog parks over youth physical and mental well-being. Thank you.
Mary, thank you very much. Very, very articulate. Kevin Chisholm.
Yes, thank you. So is it definite that by September, we're going to have a company that's going to be awarded the bid, or is that a possibility? Do you have any idea on that?
Oh, yeah, we'll definitely have awarded the bid. Yeah, that I would expect very soon. In fact, I think one of the contracts already went to the select board, and I have to put a hold on it because we haven't received a proposal yet from GCA, and they said they were going to present it. So yeah, I would expect that within a few weeks, a couple of weeks. So definitely before, but we have an answer that I don't know that, but to go back to our comment that Mary said, we're not trying to duplicate anything. In fact, I actually had to call some of the proponents of a plan and say, a lot of this stuff has already been done. You don't have to go out and collect data. We already know what's in the soils. What we need to know is, what's being changed here in terms of EPA standards, DEP standards. Are those numbers going up or down? We have to keep our eye on that, and then apply those to what we already know, and then give us, runoff data that's already been collected. So I had to go back to all of the, I'll call them applicants, the people to whom we requested a proposal, and say, we're not interested in reinventing the wheel. I think we've got sufficient data. I just want that data analyzed in terms of A, temperature, and B, net increase of contaminants. And that's a little bit complicated because it certainly goes beyond my mathematical skills when I'm trying to add a dilution level that is in the water to a soil level that's a solid component. So we have to have some kind of a scientist put those two together, because you add 2 and 2, it may not be 4. So that's one of the reasons that we wanted the environmental chemist on board as well. So the answer to your question is, I believe that we can have some progress made. I'm not sure we'll be in a position to vote on September 12th, but we'll be a whole lot closer than we are today. And hopefully we'll have somebody on board, B, at least preliminary findings for the scope of work questions that I've asked.
Okay, thank
Tim? Is that Kevin? Is that you? Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Tim?
Hello, everyone. My name is Tim Anastasia. I'm a citizen of Milton, born and raised, and I'm here to talk about the bias that I've heard throughout the community, and then the bias that I've had happen to me when I was trying to call in to have a talking point today. It was with Mr. Steve that's on this call, and I called. I asked for the citizens of Milton, that's for turf, to have a speaking period during tonight, and it took about 25 minutes of convincing that I was, I had the right, which he then finally convinced, and then he asked me why I would want turf. Now these are notes I took during the conversation. I've asked him several times during the conversation to repeat himself, and I'm sure Steve himself can talk for this as being accurate, but he said he's an agent for the commission, for the Conservation Commission. He said he's for grass. He said he's a self-described sports atheist. When I told him that,
What's
I'm
that?
for grass too.
I don't know what a sports atheist is.
Well, he told me.
I'm not making fun of you, Tim. Honest to God, I just don't know what a sports atheist is.
Well, he told me if he had his way, he would take all the sports stadiums out of this country and build churches. So, and then he said he's a self-described sports atheist, which is fine. Everyone has the right to do what they believe in. And then when I told them, I'm for grass too, I wish we could have it, but it just won't sustain the viability of the hours of play that children of this community really needs. Steve said he didn't care that the kids should be running around in the woods anyway.
All right, but don't get sidetracked into a discussion with Steve. Tell us what your point is with respect to the grass field versus the artificial turf.
Well, that's the point. When someone as a community, as someone that lives here to call in and try and say, hey, I'm calling in for turf, and that to be confronted of an agent for this commission, and then ask me why I'm for turf because he's already self-described for grass, is bias, especially if you say you're an agent with the Conservation Commission. And then when I tell them that the grass cannot sustain the activity that our children need, for this gentleman to say, I don't care because these kids should be running around in the woods and I'm a sports atheist, that's an issue.
All right. Well, it's not an issue that we can resolve here tonight. I mean, we've got some.
I know.
We want to talk about the merits of grass versus turf.
But so
don't get sidetracked. I mean, you've got some good points to make.
What we don't want to make sure that this is a well thought out by the science decision, and minds aren't already made up, and we're not prolonging this decision until the spring, which is what Steve said. That's an issue. When people of our community believe that people of this conservation committee have already made up their mind for grass, that's an issue. Optics are a big thing, right? So if a random person calls in and the optics are that the conservation commission's for grass already, that's an issue. That's something you have to get in front of, or else the rumors have already started. The community has already been thinking that the Conservation Committee has already made a decision to prolong this. And
no, don't say that.
But it's already happened.
We're not slowing this. We're not.
I know, but it's already happened. And when I call, and you're an agent for the Conservation Committee, was extremely combative to even get me to talk, and he will admit it. He'll admit it. It was a combative conversation. But the thing is for one person to say this, to have this happen. What happens when the next person calls and the next person and the
Well, call-
person that picks
Tim,
up the
call-
conservation committee's
Call
phone
me.
call says, I'm for grass.
What?
Do you
Yeah, you
understand how biased that is?
I understand how it could be perceived.
But it is, no, it's not
You've
perceived.
got a perfect chance to you speak
But
publicly right now.
Commissioner, it's not conceived. It is bias. There's concept, there's nothing
None.
conceived here. It's a thing that happened. It's fact. It's
All right, so
noted.
you've
it's
made your
stated.
complaint. Let's get back to the merits of the issue.
Well, the biggest
You're upset
merit
by
is
the conversation. I get it. I'm sorry that it happened. Let's get to the heart of the issue. I don't want to go down a rabbit hole about who said what to whom and why.
yeah, I know.
I want to get
you
to
know.
the merits of this. Do you have a point to make? Is grass better than turf? Is turf better than grass?
The biggest,
That's what we're here
all right,
for.
That here's the one. Besides the fact that we don't want to think that this commission is not already biased, but the biggest issue is our children need 1,800 hours of play time on this field. Can grass give us that? The answer is no. Period. So that's the question. And then when I say that to this commission, and if you say back to me, I don't care, these children don't need to play sports, they can go run in the woods, that's an issue. So
that's not the commission talking to you. And believe me,
Well,
I know I
agent
haven't
of the
made up my
commission
mind.
did.
That's why I'm collecting data.
an agent of the commission did. So if we need 1,800 hours, everyone here can admit that we will not get 1,800 hours on grass, period. They won't. So how many children do you want to go and say that they can't play? Because they can't, there's no other turf field they can play on in Milton. There is none. We have to go to other towns, which is embarrassing. So what other field, where else can these people play? So they go into the woods, like Steve said? Like what else can we do? Because there's no other, to be honest, there's no other solution.
Okay.
What is the other solution?
I get it. Okay. I'm going to have to, there are a lot of people in the public here.
All right. Well, thank you, Commissioner. Thank you all for listening to me. I understand. Hopefully you all will be able, if you do go to the grass, you can find 700 hours or 1,000 hours that other children can find a place to play in, because if you don't, it's going to be an issue for the kids of this community.
Understood, Tim. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks.
Milton parents want turf. I don't know your name. I can see you in the screen, but I don't know your name.
Can you see me now, John?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. I'm Brian Johnson, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 2, father of 4 daughters. I just have a question to just a comment you made. Is this commission open to having a debate about grass versus turf? I feel like that's what it's come down to versus the objective decision of putting a turf field on Lower Guile. I feel like this debate has fallen to what's better, grass or turf. Town meeting voted overwhelmingly to approve this project. The town wants this project. So I'm just hoping we stay within the lanes of the Conservation Commission, which we all support, to make sure that we are not going beyond today's current standards for the toxic levels. I've never heard of a project being approved on projected levels down the road. But this project came to your desk, and it would be nice to be approved based on the current levels and trying to stay within the black and white guidelines that are outlined. I'm afraid that we're drifting out of that. I'm one of the girls' soccer directors in town. We are struggling right now for field space. We have gone to private organizations as Point 32 Health. I've had to have meetings with the mayor of Quincy recently to try to find space for our kids. This is a field now that is being completely unutilized. This project is being pushed back, and I understand you're just doing your due diligence, and I do appreciate that. But I just want to focus on the facts and make sure we're staying within the guidelines of the state and not starting to have a debate on what's going to happen with recycling to the field down the road. The parents of Milton have to have a say that we will be willing to take the risk. You know, plastics are not great. Cars are not great. We're not driving horse and buggies still. People have to accept a risk of everything they do. And the parents of Milton do want the turf, as do all the sports committees in town. Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate the time.
Very articulate. Thank you very much for your presentation. All right, I don't see any other. I do see one other hand raised. Georgia Lee, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. I just wanted to bring up the fact that Mary Firabend mentioned obstructionism and that many of the people who are hoping to keep grass in Milton aren't abutters to the field. I am not an abutter, and I care a lot about the science, and I think that the science is clear. I actually am putting something in the chat now about how hot synthetic turf is and can be. It creates a heat island. And if we, as Tim Anastasia mentioned, want 18,000 hours of play for our kids, it's going to be really hard to accomplish
1,800, I think.
I think he said 18,000.
It's 1,800. Go ahead.
Okay, well, he wants a lot of hours, as we all do, for our children. But the thing is that in a July day when it's over 80 degrees, it's going to be really hard for our children to play on turf. And there's so much published about how hot synthetic turf gets. And I don't think Huntress debates that. So I don't know that we are going to get the usability we want out of this field on July days versus grass. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Georgia. All right, I see no other hands. I think we're in a position right now that we must wait for the proposals to be in and the contract to be signed, and hopefully we'll have at least a preliminary report. It may be a substantive one by the September meeting, but we will move with deliberate speed on this. We are not dragging our feet. And I think the sooner we get to a conclusion, the better off everyone will be. So thank you all for your participation, and we expect to see you on September 12th. Next on the agenda is request for determination of applicability, Brush Hill Lane, 0 Milton Avenue, Boston, continued hearing. Do we have the applicant?
Yes, so this is Mitch Maslanka with Goddard Consulting, representing the applicant.
All right. I think I should probably give you a report, because we had a discussion at the July meeting, and I spent considerable time with town council, and we've actually now changed town council. So during the interim, I even went back to prior town council. So I spoke to both Kevin Freitag and John Flynn, and we have a new designated town council, Peter Mello. And all have been willing to weigh in on this issue. And the question that we left last July was whether or not we had jurisdiction. It's a little confusing, because in my mind, it should have been an ANRAD as opposed to a request for determination of applicability. But it boiled down to a jurisdictional issue. So I asked town council to go back and take a look at the town bylaw, and we define isolated wetlands differently than both Boston and the state. We don't have a size limitation on our isolated land subject to flooding, or we don't require a hydrological connection to smaller inland wetlands. So under our bylaws, the Boston area would be jurisdictional for us. Under Boston, apparently it's not. And I understand it's not under the state. I got that and accepted that. My concern in July was that we can't give up the jurisdiction. So two things happened. One, town council, both John Flynn and Kevin Freitag, went back to the bylaws and started at the very beginning. And the beginning of our bylaw says, in order to protect wetland resources in the town of Milton, the following bylaws shall be implemented. Well, the isolated wetland in Boston is not an isolated wetland in Milton. So it looked like the bylaws would not apply, except if there were wetlands in Milton that needed to be protected by a Boston plan. So it kind of reversed itself. So I asked Steve to go and look to see whether or not there was any wetland in the vicinity in Milton. When I say in the vicinity, within a jurisdictional distance from the Boston project. And Steve was kind enough to go out and do exactly what I asked him. And Steve, you'll probably be in a better position because we've now kind of reversed the analysis to see whether or not the Boston project could impact anything on the Milton side, because we do define our own wetlands differently and we do protect the wetlands in Milton. So Steve, can you tell us what we're looking at here?
Yes, the magenta, the bright magenta is the Boston parcel, including the Milton parcel right here on the corner of, it's just a small corner. It looks like it's got a keyhole or a little one there because that's what the Boston assessors take as the parcel. So I took this right off of the Boston assessors database. What you're looking at around it is a 100-foot buffer zone around this parcel. Now, the location is Metropolitan Ave to the north and east, and Milton and Brush Hill Road to the east. And then if we go a little further over to the north, you'll see 71B, which means it's a hydric soil, and WS1, which is directly behind Low Circle. In fact, it's directly behind probably one of the properties that we talked about earlier today, 23 Low Circle. And this shows that in order to have an effect on Milton wetlands, there would have to be an effect from this property, magenta, over to at least the hydric soils here, which is probably about 400 feet plus, and to the wetland, it's a lot more, almost 1,000 feet away. I think that says it all.
It is.
Do you have any questions?
I think it does. And if you don't get the significance of what we have both just said, is that the wetland bylaw, we're not giving up any jurisdiction because we do continue to define our own wetlands. So if there had been something within the jurisdictional distance from the wetland in Boston, we would be protecting the Milton wetlands, but there aren't any. So if you look at it from protecting the wetlands in Milton, I know it sounds a little bit provincial and perhaps parochial, but we do protect the wetlands and the resource areas in Milton. There are none to be protected by this project. So it appears as if it should be a negative determination. This is an RDA. So based upon the advice of both Kevin Freitag and John Flynn, I would suggest that this does answer the jurisdictional question. And that's different than the merits of the project, because that's really not before us from, I believe, a jurisdictional point of view at this juncture. So commission members, any thoughts or comments on what I've relayed to you that was given to me by both town council?
I have a remark. Thank you, John, for doing this work and getting this answer. But I don't quite agree that there's no wetlands downstream, because the Neponset River is downstream from here. I know it's not anywhere near 100 feet, but ultimately, water that flows off this site goes to the Neponset River in Milton. That isn't to say that I think that there is any jurisdiction. I agree with what the answer you've come up with, that we shouldn't consider those wetlands in Milton to be wetlands we need to condition this project to protect because they're just too far away.
Thank you, Tom. Any other comments or questions or suggestions?
This is Ingrid. Steve, can you show us on this image here where the Neponset is?
Oh, it's a long way away.
Okay, so it's
no,
more it's more
this-
than the 400 feet to
Oh, gosh.
this.
Yeah.
Yes, it might be half mile plus. in
Ah,
a
okay,
westerly
yeah.
direction. Okay?
Yeah, okay.
Yes,
I was wondering if it was just right off the screen or more.
No,
Okay,
no.
yeah, I got it.
Mhm.
because you have to get down Metropolitan Ave and Fairmont Ave run parallel, and Fairmont is going off to the left, the upper left, and you've got to go get
Okay.
down across Truman Highway.
Yeah, yeah,
On the
yeah,
other side
I
of
got it.
Truman Highway.
Yes,
I
that's correct.
understand. Thank you.
Sure.
But I can't see other commissioners here. Other, so I can't see hands raised. Are there any other thoughts or questions? All right. You can take that down so we can see so I can see the people. Steve, would you do that for me?
I will try. There we go.
All right. I see, any question from commissioners first? Bruce Dixon, I see your hand raised.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I represent the neighbors for the preservation of Milton Avenue. We have been adamant about the fact that the wetland that is in Boston near the Milton line is a lot larger. And I just wanted to talk. I have a prepared statement I would like to talk about in regards to that whole thing. It'll take me a minute or so. So we
That's fine,
asked
Bruce.
for
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. We asked for a peer review of the Boston Conservation Commission negative determination of applicability results from Goddard Consulting. So we were the ones that actually asked Boston Concom for the peer review. We also appealed the peer reviewers results to the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection. So we also asked them as well, the DEP, to review the peer reviewer. So I just want to make sure that that is clear. It wasn't Goddard that made this request. It was us, because we're concerned about what is happening when it rains. Today was a perfect example. We had few inches of rain, and we have water in our basements as well as running down the street on Milton Avenue. So I'll continue and I'll complete. Even though the DEP issued a negative determination of applicability of our witness accounts of an abundance of water on 0 Milton Ave, water flowing onto my property, which abuts 0 Milton Ave, as well as water flowing onto Milton Ave for days are accurate. Back in November, I shared with you commissioners the images of the water flowing onto my property and flowing onto Milton Ave to prove that this actually does happen. And in those images, it proves that those wetlands are a lot larger than what has been found. We, the neighbors, stand by our eyewitness account that standing water occurs on 0 Milton Ave and flows off of the property on the abutter's property and on Milton Avenue, especially when there is 2 inches or more of water from a rainstorm. Any development on this property will cause more flooding and damage to our properties. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce, very much. And I understand, and I'm sensitive to what you just said. But I can only reiterate that it really is a jurisdictional issue for us. Because if Boston had the same bylaw that we have, then it would be jurisdictional for Boston. But as I understand it, Boston's bylaw is the same as the state's regulation. And that's why DEP ruled as they did. Mitch, I'm not sure you should say anything. You want to say anything?
Nope, I'm all set. I think you gave us pretty good presentation, you and Steve, of what you and town council's opinions are. So thank you for that. And I'll let you guys take it from here.
All right. So that I guess I think when we looked at it in July, people were looking at it more on the merits, and I was looking at it from a jurisdictional point of view. You were gracious enough to support my efforts to contact town council and get to the bottom of the jurisdictional issue. So I thank you for that. I'm now convinced, having talked to Kevin and to John Flynn, that my gut was incorrect, that I was reaching into the Boston jurisdiction. So at this juncture, I would entertain a motion to issue a negative determination of applicability. Is there such a motion?
I'll move that.
Is there a second? No second, no vote.
I'll second.
All right, Arthur, thank you. Is there any discussion? We still have a quorum. We do indeed. All right, so I'll go through the individual votes. Tom, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ingrid, how do you vote?
Yes.
Arthur, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well, John Kiernan. All right, so that's unanimous. Todd is, as he indicated to me before, has left, but we still have our quorum. So that's a negative determination of applicability. Number 13 and number 4. And thanks, Mitch. I didn't mean to just blow right by that. Thank you very much for your courtesy and patience.
No problem. See you.
Okay. 13, 1259 Brush Hill, 14, 1259 Brush Hill has been continued until September 12th, which gets us to the approval of the minutes. And I'll follow my suit. I actually thought I was going to get it done this afternoon. I assume, Ingrid, you did not have a chance to read it either?
No, I actually did, and I was absent on the March 14th meeting. I have no further changes or changes to the minutes as written for the March 11th site walk. And for the April 1st, and since I wasn't present for the March 14th one, I defer.
You defer anyway. Okay. Well, I have no defense, but by way of explanation, I left them in my office today. That was my job this afternoon, to read them and make comments. But I left them in my office, and I worked in Milton today, so I can't respond. Can anybody else? Arthur, are you comfortable, or Tom, voting on this?
I had no changes to make, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Tom,
I have read them as Steve has distributed them and made comments at the time, but tonight I would say I have read all the ones I received and I'm okay with them.
All right. Well, I'd ask your indulgence one more time and just give me an opportunity to review them, and I promise my oath to have everything completed. And if there are any changes, we can discuss them at our September 12th meetings, with apologies to all. Which brings us to additional business. Steve, additional business?
Yes, I think there's going to be an issue with our friends over at the Ice House. They have not gotten to us a SW, the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan. And just for your information, I think at some point we'll decide to, as I've had interaction with the contractor before, the only thing the contractor listens to, in my opinion, is us shutting them down for a week of 3. And that will be my suggestion when we finally take up the issue. I just want to give you a little preview of that. We don't have a SWIP. He shouldn't be out there working. It's in the order conditions.
Well, I agree with that, but since we've just changed our regulation on enforcement orders, we do have what I call a soft letter that is usually designed just to encourage compliance without actually issuing the enforceable order. So do you think it's appropriate? I agree with you. If we don't have a SWIFT, then right. And that is one of the orders of condition. So is Philip still with us? Yeah, there you are.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I can call you tomorrow, Philip, on this because we did change our regulations. And when we did it, with the approval of the select board, we actually had samples of the different enforcement orders. And the first one is what I call the soft one. It's simply a letter saying, would you, straighten out and fly right, please? And that might be appropriate at this point. Just say, as indicated in the order of conditions, that SWIFT plan is required. So please submit it at your earliest convenience, like 3 days. And that, so I can work with you on getting that letter out. Is this Charlie Bosworth that's doing this?
Yes, sir. And the only thing that he understood on the Naval Air Station was a complete shutdown.
All right.
And it worked very well. It worked really well. But that's where we'll eventually head, I think. That's just a
All right.
guess.
Well, why don't we take the first step first?
Understood. Yep.
All right. And I'll work with Philip on that tomorrow. I don't think this
They're
requires.
digging a foundation.
Yes. Well aware. Seen it this week. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
That's all I have. And then I should say one more thing. The people over at National Grid / Enbridge or whatever are going to do some work starting the end of August, looking at the pipe consistency within about 100 feet of the take station. Just be aware of that. The steel plates are still in place to go over the 2 or 3 small culverts that are still there. Those culverts have not been replaced yet up to the take station.
I thought they were already replaced.
No, sir. They have not been replaced. No.
We approved that work, right?
Yes, we
Yes.
did. A long time ago.
Yeah, last year. It's over a year ago now.
Yeah.
No.
I thought that work was done, and the point of it was in order to support the heavy equipment that they need to take over the road to do the pipe repair.
Exactly. They have steel plates instead that have been on the location for, well, since just after we gave them the okay. I've been up there as recently as 2 weeks ago.
Well,
How many
John Bonsall is pretty responsive.
Yes, usually. And I
National Grid.
don't know why. I haven't asked him why the schedule has slipped.
Is it a different entity that's doing the culvert repair versus the changes in the take station?
Oh, I believe so. Yes, completely different entities.
Yes. You see, I get lost. He's Algonquin Gas, which is the interstate transporter of gas. Whereas whatever the National Grid company is, that's a more local one. I know it's part of a big conglomerate, but it's still a local.
Yeah, and Bridge is involved with there some way as well.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. That's I'll call John tomorrow because John is an old friend of mine.
Oh, wonderful. Good.
High school classmates.
Oh, great.
True.
Yeah.
All right. I'll jump on that. Anything else?
Not from me.
Arthur, anything?
Just the status of the CPA funding requests. You had several and I had one in.
Yes, and I got and I meant to do this today and I did not, but I got 1 letter, not 3 letters. And at one point it says applications with an S, plural, was denied. But I think as I read it, it's the open space one for the Blue Hill Ave lot.
Okay.
But there was no mention of Pope's Pond, the trail connection, and then the handicapped accessible trail. So those weren't addressed. It looked like it was the open space one only. And yet in one sentence in the letter, we got the same letter, except a different result. Yours was approved. I believe the open space, that was the one where we asked for $100,000 for a conservation restriction with public access.
Right.
And it looked like it was there were other stakeholders that had different interests. And to be blunt, when I was there, they did ask me questions about other alternative uses of the land, including affordable housing. And I said, I'm not taking issue with the affordable housing folks. I'm just saying that, you know, our interest is in preserving open space as a great weapon against climate change. And I gave them the open space speech. But I understand that there are other stakeholders with perhaps different interests. But I meant to call Tom Callahan, and I will. That's another thing I've got to do tomorrow, to find out if they meant to send 3 letters or just 1 letter.
Okay.
I don't know. And also there is I think there's a Superfund public meeting on Thursday night. And there is a working group that is trying to lobby the EPA. And I say the word respectfully when I say lobby, you know, completely on the up and, you know, public interest, to expand either the scope of the limit of work for the Superfund cleanup to include Milton Landing, or to add what's called an operable unit, which is essentially the same thing, that you just add another piece of land, because right now the Superfund funding is for 3.7 miles of Neponset cleanup, but that ends at Adams Street or the Baker Dam. And what we're trying to do is include the Milton Landing component of it. The reason is Milton was the recipient of a state grant to dredge the Milton Landing. The problem is that when Ty and Bond, the engineering company, went out and did testing of the dredge spoils, they found very high contamination levels of PCBs. Same thing that's upstream. So somebody in a fit of lucidity and logic said, hey, wait a minute, we don't want to clean this first. It was going to be, the grant was, I don't know, $1 million or something. And the price went up to 25 million to get the contaminants out of Milton Landing. But it wouldn't make any sense to do it even if you had the money, because when they clean it upstream, it's going to release the PCBs to go downstream, and they're going to land right in the area you just cleaned. So it's got to be done in the right sequence. So that this working group, and there are different folks that, you know, with different interests and different expertise that are trying to go to EPA and say, please consider expanding the scope of your cleanup to include Milton Landing. And that, I think that'll be brought up at the public meeting. That's a Zoom meeting. I think I sent it around, but if not, I'll send it again.
And John, if you can't reach Tom Callahan on the CPC proposals, Josh Eckert Lee, in the planning department.
Yeah, and I know Josh, so I'll call him.
Right. And the deadline's on the 29th. I'll be out of September. I'll be in Canada for a good part of September. So I'll be touching bases with you and a couple of other people before I go, so that we wrap this up.
Well, before, I don't know what dates you're going, but you may want to inform everybody that there was a proposed joint site walk. I wonder if we could do it on the 26th and have the Conservation Commission and the CPA committee jointly walk the site, the Neponset Estuary. Would that be doable in August? I know everybody was talking about September, but if you're going to be going in September, it might make sense.
Well, I'll be back before the 29th. We want to set, we were going to set a date for doing that. So let me get around. I think I'm away from the 3rd to the 13th.
Okay, so you won't be at the September meeting on the 12th.
The way things are now, that's correct.
Okay, all right. Well, this is the area of land that Arthur's been championing to get the CPA funding to improve public access to the Neponset. down near the Cortland Circle area, President's Golf Course, right when you get on the expressway. If you go down those streets there, what's the other one? Cortland is one.
Bissell Avenue and
Bissell,
Riverside. Yeah.
Right. If you go down to the end of that, there's some beautiful land that apparently we own. I don't know. I don't know who owns it.
5 acres.
Yeah.
Town, owned by the town.
I know it's the town, but I didn't know if it was Conservation Commission or general municipal purposes. It's another one of those situations.
It's not for general municipal purposes. It's for natural resource purposes, but it was never, to the best of our knowledge, conveyed to the Conservation Commission.
All right. Well, in any event, think about if it would be worthwhile to end our site walk on the 26th with a walk with the Community Preservation Act folks.
Okay.
That be agreeable to everybody here?
Sure.
Ingrid, Tom?
Yep.
Okay, good. Philip? Steve?
Sure.
Okay,
I
good.
have a family meeting that day,
Okay.
so I'm not sure if I'll even be present.
All right. Fair enough.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you may want to talk to Tom Callahan or Josh Lee or whomever.
Yeah, I'll
and then
follow
you
up.
will coordinate.
To me, it's a lot like the Pope's Pond project. It's a improving access to natural areas idea.
Yeah, I agree. All right. I think that's it for additional business.
Oh, one more thing. If you've been down to Pope's Pond, you'll see that they're working away at that project of improving a portion of the walkway around Pope's Pond in a couple different places. They've made a couple of different basins as well. And it looks good so far.
Good. Because I was there on July 4th and it was a mess. I mean, the boards were broken, the mud puddles were challenging.
It's been improved greatly to date.
Good. Perfect. Good news.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's it. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right. Seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Good to go. Thanks all very much.
Good night, everyone.
Night all.
Yes.
Yeah.
Night all.
Talk to you
Good night.
later.